Ooh, great news! Eating ice cream won't make your cold worse. Frozen dairy can help soothe a sore throat and give you the calories you need when you don't feel like cooking or eating anything more substantial. Giraffes sleep for way more longer than 30 minutes a day. Their night and afternoon naps add up to around 4.5 hours a day. You can't have a truly photographic memory, even if you can recall visual material in more detail than others. You'll never compare to a film or camera sensor when it comes to precision. A bigger brain doesn't automatically make you smarter. Elephants and whales have brains way larger than humans. We might not have an impressive brain-to-body mass ratio, but 86 billion neurons help humans stay the smartest species on the planet. Light isn't the fastest thing in the world, it's gossip. No, actually, nothing can compare to it in speed in a vacuum, but it slows down when it's going through water or glass. Particles like electrons, neutrons, or neutrinos win in those conditions. The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter isn't tumbling with dangerous rocks constantly colliding. If you ever found yourself there, you'd see how empty and calm it is. The asteroids are so far apart from each other, the chances of collision are super small. A spaceship radar would detect it and help avoid any risks. You don't have to wait for the spring equinox to make an egg stand on its head. It doesn't need equal gravity or anything and can perfectly do it on any day of the year. Oranges aren't always orange. The green skin variety is just as sweet and perfectly ripe. This skin color protects them from the sun and is also a sign that there's plenty of chlorophyll in the fruit. That's why green oranges mostly grow in warmer climates and are sometimes painted orange to look more regular to buyers across the world. More good news. You really always can squeeze in some dessert, no matter how much salad, soup, or meat you've eaten before. You get bored of the savory tastes, but when you see and smell ice cream, cakes, cookies, and chocolate, let me take a minute here. Your brain gets excited and overrides fullness signals for pleasure. Plus, your stomach is a flexible organ, and sugar helps it relax and physically make room for dessert. You have way more than 5 senses. In addition to sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch, there is your ability to sense heat and cold, detect vibrations along air or water, tell where some of your body parts are in relation to others, feel pain, thirst, hunger, time, and many other things. When you call someone using your cell phone, the signal doesn't go through a satellite. Your gadget is always looking for wireless radio signal and transmitting data to and from land-based cellular towers. If you want to call someone, the nearest tower connects you to another cell through a huge network of tower-to-tower communications. Brown sugar isn't any healthier than white sugar. It's mostly white sugar with some extra residual sticky syrup in it. This syrup has some vitamins and minerals like potassium and magnesium, but even that doesn't make it diet food. The Eiffel Tower was supposed to be there for just 20 years. The idea of it was to show off France's industrial power during the World's Fair. But because Eiffel added a radio antenna and wireless telegraph transmitter to it, they decided to keep it. It also has a secret apartment on top and used to double as a meteorology lab. It's also a great landmark for a rendezvous. Green and black tea really come from the same bush. The leaves get their different tastes and looks after they've been harvested. Green tea is withered and heated through steaming. Black tea is crushed or curled and then allowed to oxidize and darken. Honey can spoil if you leave it uncovered in a humid environment. Keep the lid on and make sure no water gets inside, and it'll be edible for a really long time. Its antibacterial powers won't let any organism settle in there. If you leave wasps alone, no, they won't necessarily do the same. Bees will respect your boundaries if you don't try to hurt them. Yellow jackets are so bad-tempered, they can sting even if you're just walking by their nest without knowing it and are perfectly still. So there. Camels don't store water in their humps. They use it as a reservoir for fat to let them survive for days in the desert without stopping for food. They get water in huge amounts on the way to keep them hydrated. Excess water stays in their bloodstream. Owls can't turn their heads full circle. 270 degrees is as far as they can go without seriously hurting themselves. It's possible thanks to their unique neck bone structure. Bats aren't blind. When it's dark outside, they hunt using echolocation, using echoes bouncing off objects to navigate. There are many kinds of bats, and some of them can see 3 times better than humans. They have receptors that enable these bat species to see ultraviolet light. Fortune cookies aren't originally from China. According to the most popular version of the origin story, they were invented by a Japanese immigrant in San Francisco in the early 1900s. Einstein wasn't bad at math in school. He mastered calculus at age 15 and was always at the top of his class. This myth comes from the story of Einstein failing an entrance exam to a college in Zurich. He did great at the math portion, but failed botany, zoology, and language sections. Elephants are really afraid of mice. Like most mammals, they have brains programmed to jump back when they see a critter. No matter how huge they are, elephants will be startled by little things moving fast by their feet. A mouse can't do them any harm, though. Even if it tried climbing up the trunk, the elephant can easily get it off. The sun isn't yellow. It's a bunch of colors that mix and make it appear white. We see it as yellow or orange because the atmosphere of the Earth scatters colors like blue, green, and violet. This is also why we see the sky as blue and the sun looks warmer at sunrise and sunset. Not all comets have tails. When they're next to a star, they look like small frozen chunks of ice and rock. As they approach a star, the ice is scattered away thanks to the solar wind and looks like a tail. Sometimes these tails are too faint to see. Comets can also get a tail of dust and gas particles. An ostrich doesn't hide its head in the sand when in danger. They are the fastest two-legged animals and can outrun almost any intruder or kick them with their powerful legs. They sometimes bend down to eat some sand for better digestion. They also do it to check their eggs in the ground when they start a family. You can sleep outside after washing your hair and it won't make you sick. Even sleeping outside in sub-zero temperatures at that time can just make you chilly and make your hair freeze. Viruses cause colds, and they don't care about your hair condition. The Earth doesn't get closer to the Sun in the summer. In reality, it's farthest from the Sun in July and closest to it in January. It's warmer in the summer because the axis of our planet is tilted, letting its northern part catch more sunlight for half of the year and the southern part for the other half. So, in summer, the Sun is above the horizon for up to 17 hours a day and just for around 6 hours during winter. You can't see millions of stars even on the clearest night and far from sources of light. The highest number you can see if you have really good eyesight is around 3,000 of them. They are the ones that are close enough and bright enough. Some other luminous objects you can spot are planets, distant galaxies, and artificial satellites. The Moon really doesn't have a dark side. It's tidally locked with Earth, so we always see just one side of it. The Sun, the Moon, and our Earth are all constantly moving. So there are times when the side of the Moon visible to us is lit, and then its other side. It only seems dark to us. No worries, you don't eat 8 spiders every night in your sleep. Most people sleep with their mouths closed, so a spider can't make it inside. Even if you sleep with your mouth wide open, the powerful vibrations you produce while breathing and a warm stream of air coming out of your mouth will scare away any little spider. A penny dropped from the Empire State Building won't damage anyone on the ground. It's lightweight and can't speed up enough to be that devastating. The coin's speed does grow with every passing second during the fall, but the air resistance increases too. The worst it can do to a passerby is sting a little. Mammoths were really still roaming the planet at the time the pyramids in Giza were built. Most mammoths had been wiped out around 10,000 years ago, but a small population of 500 to 1,000 woolly mammoths lived in the Arctic until as recently as 1650 BCE. The Great Pyramid of Giza had existed for 1,000 years by the time the last woolly mammoth disappeared. Your tongue doesn't have bitter, sweet, sour, salty, or umami sections for tasting. Not even ooh daddy. Each of the 8,000 taste buds that you have on the tongue, the roof of the mouth, and even in the throat can detect all the tastes the same way. You don't have to worry about putting certain foods in certain places in your mouth to get a better taste. Fingerprints aren't 100% unique. Related people can have somewhat similar patterns. Plus, with over 7 billion people on the planet right now, and not all of the fingerprints recorded, we can't be sure anyway. Your brain has more nerve connections than there are stars in the Milky Way galaxy. It's around 200 billion stars versus 100 billion nerve cells multiplied by 40,000 nerve connections. It's impossible to breathe and swallow at the same time. There's a food pipe and a windpipe at the back of your mouth. When you swallow, the air could take the food through the wrong pipe down to your lungs. The consequences would be dramatic. To prevent it from happening, there's a flap guarding the windpipe. When food or drink is going through, breathing is temporarily paused. You can't hum while holding your nose. You're exhaling during humming, and when both your mouth and your nose are closed, the air can't escape. Sushi restaurants don't serve real wasabi. It would be incredibly expensive, so they replace it with dyed horseradish with mustard. The real thing is from the same family of plants. It's served fresh, grated off the stalk, and tastes sweeter. Your chances of getting it are about 0.5%, and if you do, you'll know it from a super high price. Carrots weren't originally orange. Before the 16th to 17th century, almost all of them were purple, with some rare yellow and white exceptions. Orange carrots have been cultivated by Dutch farmers. They believe they'd be easier to grow. It's true that things appear weightless in outer space, but there's gravity everywhere. The further you get from a heavy object, like Earth, the weaker it gets. Still, gravity affects every single spot in the universe that has mass. Strawberries aren't berries. Neither are raspberries or blackberries. Bananas, eggplants, grapes, tomatoes, and oranges are berries. They have 3 distinct fleshy layers, 2 or more seeds, and develop from 1 flower. You do have enough iron in your body to produce a metal nail that's 3 inches long. Try it sometime. Wait, don't. Lightning can strike the same spot twice, 3 times, or more than 100 times. Even during the same thunderstorm, nothing can stop a lightning bolt from striking the same place it had struck a few seconds earlier or centuries ago. Lightning prefers tall and isolated objects. The Empire State Building, for example, is hit about 25 times a year. The largest living organism isn't the blue whale or the African elephant. It's honey fungus across the Blue Mountains in Oregon. It's as long as 6.5 Burj Khalifas end to end, and that's the world's tallest building. It's still growing, and it's edible. Turkeys can blush, just like humans. The skin on their heads and necks can turn red or blue when they're excited, angry, or sick. The flap of skin over their necks is called a snood and can go bright red from excitement. During mating season, male turkeys' wattles also turn scarlet to show their interest to females. The Sahara isn't the biggest desert in the world. The Antarctic desert is almost twice as large. The second place belongs to the Arctic desert, and the Sahara is third. The main feature of a desert isn't the excessive heat or dunes. It's the lack of precipitation. The ice fields and rocky mountains of the Antarctic almost never get a drop of rain. Sitting too close to a TV won't make you go blind or give you serious vision problems. Hey, tell that to my mother. It can temporarily strain your eyes, but long-term problems are super rare. Reading in the dark won't make you go blind either. Flies live longer than 24 hours. An average housefly lives for around 1 month. Fruit flies have a lifespan of 40 to 50 days. Over this time, one female fly can have up to 500 offspring. That's why leaving flies in a locked room and waiting won't solve your insect problem. Bears don't sleep for months during hibernation. The processes in their bodies slow down and they don't eat or drink. But they can still perfectly react to any unexpected things going on around them, so keep your distance from their dens. Cracking your knuckles isn't bad for your health. The sound you'll hear while doing it is a special organic fluid bursting into the gaps between your bones. It happens under the pressure you put on your joints and is harmless. Goldfish don't forget everything that happens to them after 3 seconds. Experiments have proven they can do pretty well with their tiny brains storing information for several months. They can also hide from their foes and find food. You can't fry an egg on a sidewalk, no matter how high the temperature is outside. An egg needs 158 degrees to cook though, and a sidewalk only gets to a maximum of 145 degrees. Bananas don't grow on trees. They're an herb related to the ginger family and look somewhat like aloe vera or other stem-like succulents. Chameleons don't change their color to blend in with the environment. They do it to show their mood and to communicate. They turn black when they're nervous or upset, and when they're happy, you'll see the bright green or blue. They use lighter colors to attract mates. Toilet flushes don't spin in the opposite direction in the southern hemisphere. The Earth's rotation affects things like the Gulf Stream and hurricanes, but it has no control over toilets. The direction varies from model to model and depends on the water pressure. Mustard seed isn't the smallest in the world. The record holder in this category is the orchid seed from the tropical rainforest. Some of them are so small you won't see them with an unaided eye. They pop out in the air like dust particles and land on rainforest trees to spread further. Carrots are full of vitamin A, but even that isn't enough to help you see in complete darkness. It can only help you maintain healthy eyesight. Everything in the solar system is always in motion. The moon is moving away from the Earth with each year, and our planet gets further and further from the sun. You're also constantly on the move, even when you're standing perfectly still. White chocolate isn't really chocolate. It's made from sugar, milk products, vanilla, cocoa butter, and lecithin, but doesn't have chocolate solids in it. Cocoa butter is derived from cacao beans, which makes white chocolate a cousin of dark and milk chocolate, but not the closest relative or the same thing. Coffee won't stunt your growth. How tall you'll grow is genetic. A healthy diet can contribute to that too. Set your coffee consumption limit at 2 cups a day and you'll be fine. Wow, 2 cups? You don't need to wash chicken before you cook it. Doing it can spread germs onto your hands, work surfaces, clothing, and cooking supplies through splashes. Walnuts aren't really nuts. Neither are almonds, cashews, Brazil nuts, pecans, macadamia nuts, pistachios, or pine nuts. They're all formally seeds of drupes. They can't be called nuts as they aren't fruits that have a single edible seed with an inedible outer shell. Diamonds aren't actually that rare. They're ordinary rocks, and extracting them isn't as complicated as it used to be 150 years ago. Marketing and advertising campaigns and artificially raised prices help them to become something considered luxury. Bulls don't get angry when you show them something red. They are red-green colorblind and can only see yellow, green, blue, and violet colors. Movement is what makes them angry and self-protective. So, try to look like a banana. Swimming right after a meal won't give you cramps. Your body needs some extra blood to digest food, but swimming won't revert it from the muscles in your arms and legs, messing up their work. Adding salt to water won't make it boil faster. The temperature of salt water will get higher faster than that of regular water, but the boiling point will also be higher, and salt adds some extra mass to it, so things won't speed up. Kangaroos can't walk backwards. They have muscular legs, big feet, and tails, and can move forward fast but can't go in the opposite direction because of this body construction. They're on the Australian coat of arms along with emus that can't move backward either, symbolizing that the country is always striving forward. Milk won't make your bones indestructible. It does have calcium and vitamin D in it, but no magical bone-healing powers. It is good with cookies. That is not a myth. Looking for something slimy? Well, many people tend to believe that snails are just slugs with shells, but even though they look so similar, they're completely different species. Slugs don't need any protective shells, as all their internal organs are, well, internal, inside their slimy bodies. They can squish themselves and get into hard-to-reach places, which is why slugs can often be found in the most unlikely spaces, like under tree bark, or inside tiny crevices, or at the library pretending to study for exams. Snails, on the other hand, are tightly connected with their shells and can't survive without one. Unlike hermit crabs, which replace their shells as they grow, snails are born with a shell on their back. Baby snails look adorable with those fragile translucent bubbles that calcify and become bigger and tougher with age. Cute? Well, you be the judge. Many of the snail's internal organs are inside the shell too, meaning that if it gets crushed or damaged, well, the animal would probably not survive. Still, a snail can repair small scratches and cracks in the shell with the help of proteins and calcium secreted by its mantle. Now, turtles are very close to snails in this regard, by the way, because contrary to common myth, they can't leave their shell at a whim either. A turtle's shell is an integral part of its body, and despite the reptile being able to hide its head and paws inside to protect itself from predators, its skeleton is fused with the hard shell, and just like any other animal skeleton, it grows with the turtle itself. Now, koalas do only eat eucalyptus leaves, but there are over 600 different kinds of those, and koalas only munch on 30, or just 5% of what's available on the menu. So it has to be a very specific eucalyptus tree to make a good meal for a picky koala. These adorable creatures also have something in common with domestic cats. They sleep for 18 to 20 hours a day. Polar bears aren't at all white. Their skin is black under the fur. They need the white color to disguise themselves while on the hunt. The color black absorbs the sun better than any other, while white fur doesn't stop sunlight. Rays pass right through it. In a sense, a polar bear has transparent fur. There's a myth that dogs and cats see the world in black and white. In reality, they just can't distinguish some colors. Nobody knows how exactly dogs see. Some think they only distinguish 2 colors. Could be blue and yellow for all we know. but they can see shades of other colors better than people, and cats have wonderful night vision. They need about 7 times less light than a human to see in the dark. Now, giraffes were thought to be mute, but recently it's been found that they make low-frequency sounds at night to communicate with each other. During the day, they don't say a word and warn each other of danger in a very unusual way, by moving their well-developed eyebrows. It's likely that at night it's difficult to see the eyebrows, so they start talking for real. While we're on the topic of giraffes, these animals sleep much more than 30 minutes a day, but probably not as much as you do. Their sleeping pattern is quite typical. After researchers monitored a herd of giraffes, they found out they slept at night and took short naps in the afternoon. In total, each giraffe had around 5 hours of sleep every day. Oh, and by the way, a herd of these guys is actually known as a tower of giraffes. Makes sense with the long necks. Seagulls can drink seawater. There are salt-secreting glands near their eyes. These glands purify seawater very quickly, and the salty residue comes out through the nostrils. Yep, you guessed it, salty snot. The Adelie penguins are real romantics. They only have one partner for life. The male must give a smooth stone to the female to create a family. You could say that's kind of an engagement ring. Like humans, though, a female penguin may refuse and not accept the ring. Speaking of animal love, foxes are romantic too. Male foxes are good fathers and husbands. They're devoted to their loved ones for life. They look after the females and even pick fleas from their fur. Aww. Male foxes improve their whole houses and take an active part in their baby's upbringing. Dolphins can sleep with one eye closed and the other one open. Half of the brain dreams and rests, and the second half closely monitors the environment for signs of danger. The perfect brain for sleeping during boring classes and meetings. Hey, I didn't say that. Besides, dolphins manually control their breathing. They can simply drown if their whole brain is sleeping. Sea otters are the cutest sleepers among all animals. In the summer, because of the heat, sea otters spend all the time in water. They swim on their backs and sleep in that position. The babies are sleeping on their mother's stomach, and 2 adults hold each other by the paws so that they're not carried apart by water currents. Ostriches don't stick their heads in the sand when threatened. In fact, these guys don't bury their heads at all. This myth has spread thanks to that famous idiom to hide one's head in the sand. In real life, ostriches have to dig holes in the sand for their eggs because they're flightless birds. To make sure they're evenly heated, ostriches put their heads in there to rotate the eggs from time to time. But ostriches still have some escaping mentality. When they face some threat, they can flop to the sand and stay perfectly still, pretending they aren't alive. Now, according to a popular misbelief, sharks can breathe only while moving because swimming helps them push water over their gills. Although many kinds of sharks are designed this way, many others, like bottom-dwelling nurse sharks, don't need swimming to pump oxygen-rich water over their gills. Meanwhile, all sharks do lack swim bladders, so if they stop swimming, they'll probably sink to the bottom. But luckily, a shark's body can't be compressed. That's why rapid descents or ascents are safe for them. Scientists from Japan played audio recordings for cats to prove they're truly dismissive. In those recordings, the owners of the cats called them by their names. Cats' pupils dilated, the animals moved their tails, legs, or ears. Cats heard people, but rarely responded. It's all about evolution. Cats came to people because they were attracted by mice that ate grains. They lived close to people, but were never tame. And yet, we keep feeding them. Birds are actually the only surviving dinosaurs. They evolved from theropods, the dinosaurs that ran on 2 legs. Yep, T-Rex is a distant relative of chickens, ostriches, and even hummingbirds. In reality, flamingos are white. The bird turns pink due to beta-carotene. This pigment is found in the algae and the shrimp that it feeds on. You can change your color too. If you eat a lot of carrots, your skin will turn slightly orange. This will happen because of the high beta-carotene content in the vegetable. Sailors from all over the world talked about the giant squid they met on their voyages. For many years, scientists considered monsters with long tentacles to be a myth. But in 2004, the first photo of a giant squid was taken. They actually exist. Scientists have registered an animal that has grown to 43 feet. Mosquitoes actually bite some people more than others. The most delicious humans are those with type O blood. Also, these insects have really good eyesight. They're attracted by green, black, and red colors. So, check the color of your clothes before you go camping. You can actually put a shark in a trance for 15 minutes. To do this, you need to stroke the nose of a dangerous animal with your hand. This sort of hypnosis is called tonic immobility that happens thanks to the receptors in the shark's nose. When stroked, the receptors send a lot of signals and the shark's brain is unable to process them all. Now, what it doesn't say here is exactly how you get close enough to a shark to rub its nose. I'd say that's important information, don't you think? Elephants aren't afraid of mice per se, but these massive animals have bad vision. They also move fairly slowly. That's why they can get startled by a bird or a small creature, like a mouse darting past them. Just the element of surprise, nothing more. The chameleon can change its color, but this creature doesn't do it to camouflage itself. The color change helps the animal regulate its temperature and communicate with peers. Now, when most dogs pant, their tongues hang out of their mouths. That's why many people think that's how they sweat. In reality, dog sweat glands are located on their paw pads. Plus, there are other sweat glands all over their bodies. Dogs pant to evaporate moisture from their nasal passages, tongues, and the lining of their lungs. This also helps to cool them down. You might leave wasps alone, but don't be so sure they'll do the same. Bees do respect human boundaries, and if you don't bother them, they won't hurt you. But wasps are so bad-tempered, they can sting you even if you're just walking by their nest. Well, phooey on them. Check this out. Each zebra has its own unique pattern of stripes, just as people have their own unique fingerprints. Is it just a myth, or is it the truth? What do you think? It's true. Stripes on each zebra form a unique pattern, so it's impossible to find two zebras that are exactly the same. The stylish black and white pattern serves as an optical illusion to confuse and scare away their key enemies, predators and annoying insects such as tsetse flies or horseflies. Zebras are probably aware of how fabulous they are because they take time to groom one another. So, if you ever see two zebras standing close to one another, they aren't biting each other, it's a friendly beauty routine. Unlike humans, zebras can't scratch themselves on their own that easily, so they're just pulling loose hairs off each other. I do that. Although zebras live in herds, they usually create smaller family groups, a male, several females, and their offspring. And each member of that group is unique when it comes to their stripe patterns. All bats are blind. Would you buy it? Nah, it's just a myth. Being blind as a bat is a figure of speech, and it comes from the assumption that bats cannot see properly. In ancient times, also known as before the 21st century, people used to think that bats were blind, judging these charismatic creatures by their weird flight patterns. Many bats do use echolocation to navigate, but still, all of them can see. Here comes the next one. Lobsters are monogamous and stay together for a lifetime. True or false? What do you say? Well, sorry to spoil the romance, but it's just a myth made popular by a famous TV show. In real life, lobsters aren't monogamous at all. Dominant male lobsters mate with several females, and then, one by one, they vanish, only to reappear on a restaurant table with melted butter. No worries, the animal kingdom still has some hopeless romantics that remain faithful to their mates throughout their lives. Swans, gray wolves, beavers, bald eagles, gibbons, to name a few. You can get warts from handling frogs or toads. What do you think about this rumor? It's an old myth, probably related to the fact that both toads and frogs have bumps on their skin. Visually, these bumps remind of warts, but they're just glands that never secrete any substances that could cause humans to get warts. There are no amphibians that can give you warts, but shaking hands with another human who has them can. Moving on, turtles live inside their shells, and they can go outdoors anytime. Is it true or false? It's a myth. Those fairy tale and cartoon turtles pop out of their shells whenever they like. But in fact, saying that turtles live inside their shells is like saying that people live inside their own skin. A shell isn't just a separate empty space that serves as a costume. Although turtles can tuck their limbs inside for protection, it's actually an integral part of the turtle's anatomy. Take a look at the actual structure of its skeleton. The shell is fused to the bones of the skeleton, and the turtle can't live without it. The same goes for tortoises. One major key difference between turtles and tortoises is that tortoises spend most of their time on land, while turtles are designed to hang out in the water. That's why turtles have thinner and more water-dynamic shells, and tortoises' shells are more rounded and domed. Next, koalas' fingerprints are indistinguishable from humans. Does this sound realistic? Although it definitely sounds like it's made up, in fact, it's true. If you compare a human fingerprint to a koala's, you'd hardly be able to tell the difference even under a microscope. When scientists made this discovery, they warned the police because these fluffy little cuties are really capable of confusing forensics at crime scenes. The smart guys suppose that the koala's fingertip features have recently improved independently in their evolutionary history. Koalas' relatives like kangaroos and wombats don't have the same features. Koalas probably developed these complicated fingerprints because they help them grip onto leaves and branches more easily. Koalas are known as super fussy eaters. In fact, they prefer eucalyptus leaves of a particular age. Their sensitive fingers may have evolved as a tool to spot out the right leaves by their texture. Koalas aren't the only mammals with human-like fingerprints, by the way. Finger patterns of chimps and gorillas are also pretty complex. Ready to move on to the next rumor? Ostriches put their heads in the sand to hide from predators. Myth or true? What do you say? Nah, that's just a myth. Ostriches don't stick their heads in the sand when threatened. In fact, these guys don't bury their heads whatsoever. This myth has spread, thanks to that famous idiom, to hide one's head in the sand. In real life, ostriches have to dig holes in the sand for their eggs because they're flightless birds. To make sure they're evenly heated, ostriches put their heads in there to rotate the eggs from time to time. But ostriches still have some escaping mentality. When they face some threat, they can flop to the sand and stay perfectly still, pretending they aren't alive. Goldfish can't remember anything for longer than a second. Can it really be that bad? If you often say you have a goldfish memory as an excuse for forgetting something important, I have some bad news for you. Multiple studies have proven that goldfish can remember things for several months, if not more. Scientists from an Israeli university held the cutest experiment. For 1 month, they turned on classical music while feeding the fish. They believed that this practice would teach the fish to associate the melody with food. In 5 months, after the end of that training period, the fish still got excited and started looking for food every time they heard the music piece that had played earlier. Ah, Mozart! Hey, where's my food? It's not clear exactly where this myth came from or why it's so popular, but some people suggest that goldfish owners started it as they felt guilty about keeping their pets in tiny bowls. Cats and dogs are colorblind. Any thoughts on this one? Well, that's not true. Cats and dogs have much better color vision than we thought. This myth is probably just an exaggeration of the fact that each animal perceives colors differently than people. Studies reveal that both cats and dogs can see in green and blue. They also have more light-sensing cells in their eyes, also known as rods, than humans do. It means that cats and dogs can see way better in low light spaces. Dogs' eyes have fewer cones, those color-sensing cells. That's why scientists believe that dogs' approximate color vision is only about 1/7 as vibrant as humans. Sharks can only breathe and stay alive when they swim. Does this one sound real to you? According to a popular misbelief, sharks can breathe only while moving because swimming helps them push water over their gills. Although many kinds of sharks are designed this way, many others, like bottom-dwelling nurse sharks, don't need swimming to pump oxygen-rich water over their gills. Meanwhile, all sharks do lack swim bladders, so if they stop swimming, they'll probably sink to the bottom. But luckily, a shark's body can't be compressed. That's why rapid descents or ascents are safe for them. Sea otters hold hands so they don't drift apart while sleeping. Can you believe that? Yep, it's true. You can keep awing at it, but in fact, this way of sleeping has a practical purpose for them. Scientists suggest that sea otters develop this cute habit to stay close with their mating partners. If you hold your otter girlfriend's hand tightly all night, it will reduce the risk of her mating with another male while you're sleeping. Shameless. Also, holding hands helps otters to protect themselves from predators because they stay away from the land altogether. Now, if a human touches a bird nestling, its mother will abandon it. Myth or truth? What do you think? Luckily, it's just a myth. In fact, parent birds don't recognize their younglings by smell. So, feel free to put the cuties back in the nest. And always hang on to your otter girlfriend so you won't get eaten. Good advice. Hi. Do chameleons only change color for camouflage? No. They can actually change colors to reflect their mood. So, males turn a bright color to show their dominance, and they become darker when they get aggressive. Chameleons also change color to adapt to different temperatures. A cold chameleon will turn dark to absorb more heat, while a smoking hot chameleon will turn itself pale to reflect the sun's rays. By the way, do comedians change color for camouflage? Only if their jokes aren't getting any laughs. Okay, I made that up. Now, there's a myth that if you drop a penny from a skyscraper, it'll pretty much destroy whatever's underneath. But when put to the test, researchers found that it just isn't true. On its way down, a coin can't gather enough velocity to cause permanent damage to anything, mostly because of wind resistance and the penny spinning around and stuff. Anyway, just hang on to your change. Now, some people believe that toilet flushes spin in the opposite direction in the southern hemisphere. Some things are affected by the Earth's rotation, like the Gulf Stream or hurricanes, but toilet flushes are way too small. Flushes can spin in either direction, whether they're in the northern or southern hemispheres. Trust me, I know. The biggest determinant of flush direction is the design of the toilet bowl and the water pressure. There's a popular saying that lightning never strikes in the same place twice. Lightning often strikes near the same place a lot more than that. Lightning generally chooses the tallest, pointiest spot as its target. Researchers have found that the Empire State Building gets struck by lightning almost 100 times a year. And quite a few people have been zapped more than once, like a lot more. So, if you're tall and pointy, be careful out there. So there's a common belief that bats are blind. But bats have better vision than humans at night, although humans can see more clearly during the day. Maybe this myth came about because bats rely a lot on their hearing to get about. Or maybe it's because bats see the world in black and white. Now, do goldfish really have short memories? Well, most people put it at 7 seconds. In reality, goldfish can remember things for as long as 7 months. Without a good memory, goldfish who live in nature would never find food. Did anyone ever tell you that a mother bird will reject its offspring if they've been touched by a human? That would be nuts, because most birds don't have a developed sense of smell. They'd never be able to identify the scent of a person. The vulture is an exception to this rule. It has an amazing nose, but then who'd want to touch a vulture anyway? Ostriches bury their heads in the sand when they're scared, except they don't. This myth probably came into being because an ostrich's head is disproportionately small in comparison to its body. So, from a distance, it looks as if the ostrich has its head stuffed in the sand. But if it really did that, it would pass out from not being able to breathe. Another myth is that opossums hang on branches with their tail. The opossum does use its tail to help it climb trees, but its tail can't support its weight. Even a hulked-out calisthenics master opossum could only hang there for a few seconds max. Legend has it that a penguin will fall backward when looking up at an aircraft. Cutest myth ever. Penguins can maintain their balance no matter what, even while looking up at the sky. But low-flying airplanes may cause penguins to flee their nests in panic. Do dogs really sweat by salivating? No, they sweat through their foot pads. But salivating and panting does help them regulate their body temperature. Cat owners may think that a cat only purrs when it's happy. But cats also purr when they're hungry, distressed, or recovering from an injury. Researchers think that purring may be a self-healing trick. Somehow, it keeps their bones and muscles working better. Legend has it that if you run into a skunk, there's only one possible outcome. You're gonna stink for a while. But skunks prefer to flee from danger rather than spraying their magic juice around. That smelly spray's their last line of defense. Before that, they usually stomp their feet and slap their tails to ward off any danger. Did you know there's an alpha wolf in every pack? Except again, there isn't. Unlike captive wolves, wild wolves don't share this kind of social order. They live in family groups like humans, where the parents are the leaders and the little ones gotta do as they're told. There's a myth that owls can turn their heads full circle, but that would cause them significant damage. But still, they can turn their heads comfortably more than halfway around because of their unique neck bone structure. If you've ever poked a turtle's shell thinking it won't hurt the guy inside, you'd be wrong. A turtle's shell is a living and feeling part of its body, with a complete nerve-ending supply. If the shell gets damaged, it can even endanger the turtle's life. There was a time when people thought that unwashed hair was the ideal habitat for head lice. But head lice don't discriminate. No, they can make themselves a home in all hair types. All they really want is a warm scalp. Most people are familiar with the phrase, "an apple a day keeps the doctor away." Apples are good for you, sure. They're packed with nutrients like fiber and vitamin C. But does anyone really think that's enough? When it comes to food hygiene, the 5-second rule just doesn't make sense. There should be a "where you drop it" rule to replace the 5-second one. Generally, if you drop food on your kitchen floor, it's going to pick up fewer bacteria than if you drop it at the checkout counter of a busy supermarket. Of course, that's assuming your kitchen's clean. Uh-oh. Ever wondered whether the story about chewing gum taking 7 years to digest is true? Nah, it isn't. Chewing gum isn't too different from any other food. It takes around the same time to digest, but it's not exactly nutrient-heavy. Legend has it that catching a cold is likelier to happen in cold weather. But studies have shown that weather doesn't really play a part in getting a cold. A virus does. People may experience more cold-like symptoms when the weather is icy cold, but temperature has nothing to do with recovery time or anything like that. Do people only use 10% of their brains? Well, I have some friends who seem to… never mind. No, the answer is no. Scientists who've studied brain scans say they don't show any large dormant areas of the brain. But if the myth is just about humans having a long way to go to reach their full potential, yeah, that sounds about right. One of life's no-nos is to jump into the pool right after eating. But hitting the gym after a big meal can leave you feeling just as uncomfortable as doing a few laps. Also, if you're worried about getting a cramp in the pool, those can happen anytime, not just after a meal. Does shaved hair grow back darker and thicker? Researchers say it doesn't. But shaving does give your hair a blunt tip, which can make it feel thicker. When it comes to color, that new, darker stubble is just an illusion. Some people are convinced that eating turkey leaves them feeling drowsy. It's true that turkey has a chemical that can cause drowsiness, but so does chicken or beef. Turkey's a favorite for those massive family celebrations, so that drowsiness, it's probably due to the huge amount you ate. The myth that people lose most of their body heat through their heads was probably first invented by a hat salesman. Not surprising. Scientists say that people lose only about 10% of their body heat through their heads. You lose heat through your skin, no matter where that skin is. Have you heard the saying that a full moon can affect your mind somehow? And no, but researchers believe that light from a full moon can affect your sleep, which can affect your mood. Did ancient Vikings really wear those awesome horned helmets? There's no real evidence to back up this claim. This myth probably came from books and music, looking to spice up their heroes a bit. If you want to see a Viking with a helmet, go to a Minnesota Vikings game. That's about as close as you're gonna get. Some people believe Einstein flunked math in school. Einstein himself debunked this theory by saying he mastered calculus at age 15. But Einstein did fail to enter the school of his choice because he flunked languages on his first try. But math? He passed with flying colors. So, what kind of gas do you fill up with? Well, tacos usually do the trick for me, but at the filling station, you've probably noticed different tabs with some numbers on gas pump buttons. Those are octane levels, varying from regular and mid-grade to premium. Each one provides a different level of octane that your specific engine type requires to function effectively. Your choice should be based on the compression ratio of your engine. So, the myth of using premium for a car that requires regular gas to gain better performance or to boost the engine's health is false. Best stick to the fuel recommended for your car. You'll save money buying the correct fuel. But what if you filled your gas tank on a cold morning, allowing the fuel to shrink? Won't it make the fuel denser, providing more value for your dollar? Well, this is another false myth. The supply tanks are buried so deep underground that the temperature inside doesn't change at all. We've all heard that the toilet bowl flushes in the opposite direction in different hemispheres, clockwise in the north and counterclockwise in the south. In theory, the Coriolis effect should indeed make the water move in those directions. But in reality, the departing water is only influenced by how it's flushed, and the direction of the flow doesn't depend on the place. Now, you're caught in a thunderstorm and there's no shelter around you. Lightning strikes suddenly, and your first thought is to run towards where it just struck. After all, lightning never strikes the same place twice, right? Wrong. The lightning did hit that spot for some reason. This might be a sign that it's a risky place. Such a spot could be easily struck again. Best find some shelter and stay away from metal objects. Eating before swimming has always been considered dangerous. People believed it caused cramps. But this isn't actually true. The only negative effect of swimming after having a meal is shortness of breath. So just make sure you keep to the shallows as your food goes down. The Great Wall of China is often claimed to be visible from space. But there's actually no building on Earth that can be visible from such a distance. You can see lights on Earth during the night, though. Albert Einstein, the greatest physicist of all time, was often mentioned for his poor math skills. People said he'd failed this subject at school. But even though Einstein did fail an irrelevant entrance exam, he was actually really good at math, even creating his own original proof of the Pythagorean theorem at the age of 12. Such a late bloomer, huh? Spring is in the air. Unfortunately, this isn't the best time for baby birds. They tend to fall out of their nests. Sometimes they end up in a dangerous place and should be taken somewhere safer. But you've probably been told that if someone touches them, their mother will no longer take an interest in raising its young. In reality, birds have a very poor sense of smell and can't tell if a human has made contact. So feel free to place them back into their nest if needed. Given our brains are so large, it's a shame we only use 10% of their capacity. Well, that's another myth. You actually use your brain to the fullest, but different parts of it work at different times during the day. Now, there was a time when warming up your car in cold weather was a necessity, and some people believe it's still true. But today, we use different cars, and it's worse for your vehicle to be left idling for too long. As for warming it up, 30 seconds is all the waiting you need. There's an old saying that relates to bats' poor eyesight, but this couldn't be more untrue. Not only do they use echolocation, which is extraordinary, but they can also see pretty well. In fact, they see better than us humans during dusk and dawn. Watching TV or staring at your computer doesn't give you square eyes or harm them in any way. Your eyes simply become strained and tired after a while, but as long as you blink enough not to let them dry out, they'll be fine. Baldness is a natural occurrence in men. Shampoos, gels, sunlight, hats, and levels of testosterone have all been blamed for the early loss of hair. But natural hair loss is purely hereditary. It can come from both sides of the family, but mainly from the father's genes. We've all swallowed our chewing gum, whether by accident or there wasn't a table to stick it under. Well, don't worry, it won't reappear 7 years from now. Your stomach will easily digest it and pass it straight on through. Purchasing makeup in bulk is a great way to save money, as makeup supposedly never expires. But it does. It can also grow bacteria, which will negatively affect your skin. So make sure to renew your supply every 12 months. Another myth about makeup is that it's harmful to the skin. But in reality, it's completely fine and can help protect your skin from pollution. Just don't forget to remove it daily. Vikings have always been admired and popular in cultures around the world. They've been pictured as brave warriors, wearing helmets with horns on them. But the truth is, they never had horns. This image was first portrayed in an opera composed by Wagner in the 19th century. And since then, the horns have been associated with Vikings. You might have been told not to wear red around bulls. But in reality, it doesn't matter what you wear, as these animals can't see color. They're usually provoked by general movement. Dogs, on the other hand, can see colors. But how they do it is different to humans. The ostrich will lay its head and neck along the ground if it sees an enemy coming. As the bird's colors match the ground, it easily blends into its surroundings. At the same time, ostriches often look as if their heads are stuck in the ground. But they are not. Ostriches wouldn't be able to breathe if that was really what they were doing. The Scottish Highlands are synonymous with beautiful landscapes, kilts, and the soothing sounds of the bagpipe. But the bagpipe isn't originally Scottish. This instrument was first used in the Middle East centuries before anyone in Europe had the opportunity to annoy their neighbors by playing this unusual instrument. Now, during deep sleep, you breathe heavily and can accidentally pull into your mouth all kinds of things. That's why you swallow 7 spiders on average per year, or so they say. But this is not possible. A spider can find nothing less appealing than a growling, fleshy pile of human that offers no food. It simply won't get near your mouth. Your fingernails don't grow at the same rate. The more the hand or finger is used, the more it promotes the growth of the nail. That's why the nails on your dominant hand grow faster than on the other. Ninjas just didn't have one color of their famous ninja uniform. Of course, black was the best to blend in at night, but they also had quite a wardrobe that contained many colors to blend in on other occasions. Shaving your hair won't make it thicker, change its color, or make it coarser. It just appears that way, since new hairs start growing back with blunt tips at the ends. The memories of goldfish last way longer than 3 seconds. These creatures can remember things for up to 3 months. You can also teach your goldfish to feed in the same place every day, amongst other tricks. Chameleons' full color of dull brown and green already blends in with their surroundings. These animals don't need their ability to change color to hide. Their amazing skills are instead used for communication and temperature control. During an earthquake, you're advised to find a doorway that is the safest place in the building. In reality, it's not safer than any other part of your house. Instead, seek shelter under a table or desk until the shaking stops. Opossums have been shown to hang upside down in many cartoons. And indeed, their tails are strong enough to allow them to hang this way for a short while. But their bodies are too large to be hanging from a branch for more than a quick picture. Now, we're all aware of the saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. But although puppies learn more easily, grown-up dogs can also learn tricks with ease. A trick you should avoid, though, is the one that involves your pooch licking your face. Dog saliva has slightly more alkaline pH, which can prevent bacteria from breeding. But there can be hundreds of bacteria living in a dog's mouth, which may be harmful to your skin. Nah, my dog can kiss me all she wants. Napoleon was one of the most successful emperors in human history. But in modern times, he's sometimes mocked for his short stature. However, at 5 foot 6 inches, he was above the average height for that time. Napoleon even once played point guard for the French national basketball team. Nah, I made that up.
You've probably seen at least one epic quicksand movie scene in your life. Watching a person gradually sink in the sand might cause tangible anxiety and even give you asthma sensations. Movies taught us to believe that falling into quicksand without any help around is fatal, and struggles only help to bring the sad ending closer. This myth may cause problems in real-life situations, so let's debunk it. When researchers studied quicksand, they revealed that it tends to thicken with time, but it still remains very sensitive to movements, even small ones. At higher stresses, quicksand can liquefy in a blink of an eye, but thankfully, a person who tries to swim out of the quicksand will never manage to drown completely. Humans just aren't dense enough. Quicksand is basically water mixed with fine sand and clay. And the density of the human body is twice lower. So, unless you're a superhero made of an unknown massive metal, there's no reason for panic. Remember that you would probably descend about up to your waist without going any further. Although you might feel the tension in your chest, the quicksand will allow you to float away. It might be harder to get out once the sand sediment begins to form. In this case, the quicksand's viscosity will increase and require solid amounts of force. So, let's say you've just stepped into quicksand. How to get out? First of all, if you're wearing a backpack or something heavy, drop what you're carrying immediately. If possible, get rid of your shoes too. It usually takes a minute for the mud to liquefy, so you can try to take a couple of quick steps back. But if you feel that you're stuck, avoid taking large steps. Movie characters usually begin to yell and their friends tug on them with all their might, but in fact, it's not so safe for your body. Just wriggle your legs around to create a space between the body and the quicksand. This way, water can flow down to loosen the sand. It's important to do it slowly and gently. And if you happen to sink up to your hips or higher, bend backward. This way, it will be harder to sink. Keep on floating on your back and gently pull your legs out of the trap. Once your legs are free, you can use your arms to smoothly propel yourself backwards as if you were swimming. When you find yourself at the edge of the quicksand, carefully roll to hard ground. Also, it will be good to carry a stick when you walk in risky areas. It's helpful when you need to detect upcoming quicksand, and if you're already stuck, you can put it horizontally behind your back. It will create a bridge on which you can lean while crawling out. By the way, an object with a higher density would still float on a quicksand. Aluminum, for example, is almost 1.5 times more dense than quicksand. When researchers placed an aluminum ball on top of a container with specially created quicksand, the ball remained on the surface. When they began shaking the container gently, the ball stayed floating on top. But when they shook it a bit harder, the ball sank to the bottom. So, if, say, you dropped a pack of cash on quicksand and you want it back, pull it very carefully using long tongs. And avoid touching the mud itself. Phew! Finally got out of the sandy trap, but here crawls a creepy snake and another movie myth. Green anacondas are one of the largest snakes in the world, and females are usually much larger than males. But the very anaconda from a series of movies measures 40 feet. That's too long even for this extraordinary creature. In real life, the biggest anaconda ever found was 33 feet long and weighed about 880 pounds. Meanwhile, the average length for an adult female anaconda varies between 15 and 16 feet. Anacondas prefer living in swamps and slow-moving streams, mostly in the tropical rainforests of the Amazon and the Orinoco basins. The green anaconda belongs to snakes called constrictors. These snakes are not venomous. Instead, they wrap their bodies around their prey and give it a final hug. Let's say you refused to hug anaconda and continued walking, and suddenly you get bitten by a venomous snake. Everyone knows you should just brace yourself, suck the venom out of the bite, and continue the journey as if it never happened, right? Wrong. This old-school method might seem very epic, but today it's known to cause more harm than good. A venomous snake bite is basically a poorly made injection. The venom doesn't just stay in a bubble under the skin, it gets into the lymphatic system, and it can hardly be removed by suction. But if you manage to do so, you still risk poisoning yourself. Although, technically, swallowing venom is relatively safe, it's still a bad idea. If you have any open sores or cuts in any place from the mouth to the stomach, the venom can still enter the bloodstream and cause damage. Walking is also a bad idea. It's recommended to stay as still as possible to slow down the venom traveling through your lymphatic system. Don't wash the bite. Doctors may use this area to quickly identify the type of snake that bit you, and don't try to change clothing. Any unnecessary movement may cause the venom to move into the bloodstream more rapidly. You arrived at the hospital just in time and the doctors helped you. But unfortunately, your arch enemy is waiting around the corner. He sprinkles a couple of chloroform drops on his handkerchief, puts it on your nose, and nothing happens because we're not in a movie. Chloroform is presented as a common tool to instantly knock someone out in almost every movie where it appears. But in reality, this substance doesn't work so quickly. Even at higher doses, it takes at least 5 minutes for chloroform to start working. And several drops, as it usually appears on the screen, are not considered a high dose. Real doctors widely used chloroform as an anesthetic in the previous century, but it had many unwanted side effects. So later, its usage declined after the development of safer and faster inhalation anesthetics. You run away from the enemy and find yourself trapped in a storage room. There are no windows, but you find a ventilation hatch door. You're not claustrophobic. You can easily escape through a ventilation shaft, right? Nope. Time to debunk another movie myth. Ventilation shafts can be really narrow and dangerous. If you manage to get inside, you'll have to deal with some filters, a fan, and other obstacles. Also, metal edges on the inside can be pretty sharp, which doesn't make the journey safer. And besides, most ventilation shafts are not designed to carry the weight of a human, so it might just fall apart under your body. No big deal. The enemy captures you and takes you on a plane. No time to explain. Let's go skydiving. You're about to shout "Hasta la vista, baby" to your enemy. But unlike in some of the movies, in real life, you cannot talk while you're in freefall. It's impossible to be able to talk whilst 120-mile-per-hour winds are all up in your face. That's why skydivers communicate through hand signals and facial expressions. You land and find yourself in medieval London. But wait a minute, why are all these people so tidy? Thanks to movies, many people imagine those that lived in the Middle Ages as being very dirty and smelling even worse. The myth claims that only rich people bathe and did it only a couple of times a year. But in fact, it's not the case. Unpleasant body odor was associated with sin. So people were expected to do their best to stay fresh, no matter how rich they were. Rich people could afford to immerse themselves in tubs of heated water, while the lower class washed with wet clothes. Also, public saunas and baths were quite common in the Middle Ages, and they were really popular among the common folk too. People went there for the sake of hygiene and socializing, just like in the era of ancient Roman baths. The city of Bath in England was one of the popular destinations. Crowds came from all parts of the country to tidy up and enjoy its famous natural hot springs.
Now, one of the most common animal myths is that mice love cheese. It popped out a long time ago, probably as early as when people started storing food. Since mice are regular visitors to human homes, they were constantly looking for food they could eat. People used to store grains in glass jars. They also kept their meat hanging up high. But they'd lay the cheese on the shelf, which was an easy target for all the unwelcome pantry visitors like mice. So they ate it because they couldn't reach anything better. But a mouse will definitely more likely go after chocolate or some other sweet thing than the cheese. Who can blame them? Now, flamingos don't really stand in the water on one leg so they wouldn't get cold. This is just a simple way for them to spare the effort. It's exhausting for us humans to stand on one leg, but for them, this is the most stable position possible considering their peculiar anatomy. This pose doesn't require any muscular work. Now I'm jealous. One of the most widespread and oldest myths out there is that ostriches hide their heads in the ground every time they're scared. A long time ago, researchers thought ostriches weren't very smart because they bury their heads in the ground without being aware the rest of their large bodies are still out there, where everyone can see them. In fact, ostriches do it when they want to swallow sand and pebbles to boost their digestion or just turn over the eggs they lay in their nests. And even then, they technically don't bury their head, but put it near the ground. Otherwise, with its head in the sand, the poor thing wouldn't be able to breathe. No reason to think of an ostrich as a frightened bird. Like some other animals, it will flee if it senses there's a danger coming. And in some situations, it'll fight back and defend itself. And that's one angry bird. What do you think is the largest thing a blue whale can swallow? Well, we're talking about the biggest animal ever known to have lived on our planet. It can grow up to 100 feet long with a weight of 200 tons. Its heart is as big as a car, and its tongue can weigh as much as an average elephant. It's easy to imagine a blue whale swallowing cars, people, and even small ships, perhaps. But it's all wrong. The largest thing it can actually swallow is a grapefruit. Its throat can take the size of a small salad plate. Whales feed on small fish, plankton, and marine crustaceans, so they don't need a bigger throat. But we wouldn't be able to survive the juices inside a blue whale's stomach anyway. It would finish us within 15 seconds, similar to how long we'd last in space without a spacesuit. So don't try this. Camels don't store water in their humps. We're talking about animals with extraordinary resistance to some pretty extreme conditions. They can survive even when drinking water only every 8 to 10 days, but not because they have a secret stash on their back. It's because, when they have a chance to drink, they will swallow 50 gallons of water at one sitting. They mostly use it to replenish 30% of their total body weight, an amount they can lose by dehydration. So, they lose a lot of water but quickly regain it. Their humps are where they deposit fat, but it's not for producing water. The oxygen camels would need to inhale would cause them to lose too much water because it would evaporate through their lungs. That's why they use fat as a nutritional source for energy. This helps them survive in arid regions and times of scarcity. Now, it's a myth that anteaters vacuum ants using their noses. They don't go around looking for ants and hoovering them through their long snouts. Anteaters have very long tongues. Giant anteaters have tongues that go up to 2 feet long. It's the shape of a strand of spaghetti and covered in spiny hooks and sticky saliva that traps ants, up to 160 times in a minute, which means they eat up to 20,000 insects in a single day. That's a lot of bugs. They open anthills using their claws and then do the rest of the work with the tongue. They don't have teeth, so they only swallow all the insects they catch. Movies might have given you a false sense of security when it comes to dinos. Nope, standing very, very still couldn't save you from a raging T-Rex coming after you. It's a myth. The Dino King had bad vision. These beasts may have seen better than modern-day raptors. They had excellent depth perception, something present in today's animals such as eagles and hawks. Even if, by some miracle, the Dino King can't see you or thinks you're just a small tree or some other object because you're standing so still, they had a pretty good sense of smell. So, the better option would be to run because the T-Rex is not as fast as scientists used to think, up to 33 miles per hour. Considering their anatomy, they could move at a speed of 12 miles per hour. Anything faster than that would have caused serious bone damage. But this didn't stop them from ruling the animal world because there were plenty of dinosaurs way slower than them, so they didn't have to worry about food. Another misconception states that owls can spin their heads, neither more nor less than 360 degrees. Their head spinning does have its limit, 270 degrees in one direction. Since they can turn 270 degrees to the left and right, owls have a 540-degree range of motion. Don't worry, if you touch a butterfly's wings, the animal won't lose its ability to fly. It will survive, despite the common myth that says the opposite. Butterfly wings have scales. When you touch them, some scales might shed off, but it's not a bad thing, because they shed off naturally too. Because of sheddable scales, they can escape more easily if they get stuck and trapped in spider webs. Now, the next myth has inspired many movies, books, and TV series scenarios, but no, wolves don't howl at the moon. They typically howl at night, true, but because that's the period of time when they're most active. They'll also look up while howling since this helps the sound travel. That way, other wolves will hear them from around 6 to 7 miles away. And that's why they howl in the first place, to communicate with each other. They make specific sounds for a certain situation. For example, to help a wolf that lost its pack find its way home. The moon just happened to accidentally be there while wolves were communicating. Okay, giraffes only need 30 minutes of sleep a day. That's another myth. They sleep about 4.5 hours daily. It's not that unusual for animal species that are most active during daylight. Studies also show giraffes usually lay down to sleep for less than 11 minutes at a time. Many people believe moles are blind. These small burrowing mammals actually can see. It's just their vision is really poor and only adapted to recognize light. They're also colorblind. When they're searching for food and navigating the dark underground, these creatures mostly rely on their touch and sense of smell. Now, their sense of touch is sharp, which is why moles can feel nearby vibrations of activity. This helps them avoid danger or find their next meal more easily, like millipedes, worms, centipedes, and other invertebrates. Yum! They're really fast at digging and can dig a couple of inches per minute. In the winter, animals hibernate not because it's too cold for them to be outside, but because there isn't enough food during that period. When an animal is in hibernation, its heart rate, body temperature, breathing, and other metabolic activities slow down significantly. That's how they conserve energy. Chipmunks, bats, turtles, snakes, they all hibernate during the winter, which saves them energy for other seasons when they get more active and are capable of getting more food. I'd say bears too, but they're not the true hibernators. If you try waking one up during the winter when you believe the animal is sleeping, you might end up having a bad time. Now, they do slow down, which means they sleep for extended periods of time. They're still not asleep for the entire winter season, and you can easily wake them during their sleep, so let's not. Now, don't believe myths. Earwigs won't lay eggs in your ears. Yup, despite their name, they're not that interested in your ears. Well, at least, there's no evidence they'd want to go there. They prefer to spend their time in dark, moist places, such as under tree bark or in soil. So, your ears are off the hook. Well, I hate to break this to you, but the sun isn't really yellow. Technically, the light it gives off is white. It's all because of the atmosphere, our atmosphere. There's an effect called Rayleigh scattering. That's when the gases in the atmosphere bend the light. The same effect is the reason why the sky seems to be blue, or why sunsets look like a stunning combination of reds and oranges. On a lighter note, if you go into space, you won't immediately be weightless. Scientists mostly agree that space begins where our atmosphere is more or less a vacuum, which is 62 miles up. But it's not like you magically become weightless from the moment you pass that point. Let's say you're in a rocket that's speeding up. You'll definitely feel the gravity of our planet. But you'll feel weightless from the moment you start falling down. To orbit something actually means you're falling forever around that particular object. The moon is orbiting us. We're orbiting the sun. Our entire solar system orbits around the center of the Milky Way, our galaxy. That's just a crazy cosmic dance where they're all falling toward one another. So, if you're 250 miles above our planet, you'd have to travel 17,500 miles per hour around the Earth to feel continuous freefall. That's the speed at which the International Space Station and people who work there orbit around our planet. Meanwhile, if you turn the thermostat up high, the rate of heating won't increase. It doesn't put more effort in when you set a higher temperature. For example, if you set the thermostat at 85 degrees Fahrenheit, you won't change the heating speed, only the target temperature. If you set it higher, you might end up wasting more energy, and you'd be too hot. Now, the 7 spikes on the Statue of Liberty are not there to represent the 7 continents and 7 seas, as some previously thought. The spikes stand for sun rays, while the circle is there as some halo. It's like when immigrants arrive on a boat, the statue greets them with, "Hello and welcome." Do you still believe that summer is so warm because, at that phase, our planet gets closer to the sun? Well, it's a big fat myth. When it's summer in, say, the northern hemisphere, our planet isn't actually closer to the sun. It's the opposite. The Earth is at its farthest point from the sun during July and at the closest point during January. Summer is warm because our planet is tilted. During its orbit, the Earth's tilt allows the energy coming from the sun to hit us more directly because the angle is steeper. Now, anteaters don't eat ants through their nose. They rip open anthills with their claws and get the ants through the holes with their super long tongues. Those can extend twice as long as their entire heads. The tongues are sticky and covered in tiny spikes, so it's not that hard for them to trap those ants. Anteaters manage to swallow up to 20,000 ants on a daily basis. Now, T-Rex didn't have bad vision. Some research showed that they may have had depth perception even better than today's eagles and hawks do. Also, they weren't as fast as they are in the movies. Based on the structure of their body, they were probably moving no faster than 12 miles per hour. Any quicker than that would damage their bones. But that wasn't a bad thing, because the T-Rex would go after dinosaurs way slower than itself most of the time. Ooh, that's one beautiful butterfly. Ooh, don't touch it. It won't be able to fly again. No worries, it's another popular myth. It'll live and still fly if you touch it gently. Butterflies have scales on their wings, which means some might shed off if you touch them. But those scales will shed off naturally anyway. Such sheddable scales may be the reason why they manage to escape when a spider catches them in their web. Now, wolves really don't howl at the moon. It might make a good movie scene, but in real life, they howl because they're active during the night. They look up not to stare at the moon, but because that way the sound they make will travel better. The rest of the wolves will hear them from distances of 6 to 7 miles away. They howl to communicate with them and even have a special sound they make when they lose their pack. Wolf packs don't necessarily have an alpha leader. When more wolves get together, they get competitive and want to dominate others. So it might seem one always has to end up as an alpha. But when they're in the wild, they stick with their families to help each other. The elder wolves naturally have higher status, similar to many other animal families. Have you ever heard that giraffes only sleep for half an hour a day? Well, it's false. They sleep approximately 4.5 hours daily. It's fairly normal amongst animals that are active during the day. They tend to lay down and go to sleep for less than 11 minutes at a time. Crocodilia, the order to which crocodiles and alligators belong, can't run as fast as a racehorse. That's a myth. They can reach up to 12 miles per hour when they're on land, but even when they do, they can't move at such speeds for a long time, maybe 60 to 80 feet before they get tired. A really fast human will move at 12 miles per hour while walking, so many people could outrun a crocodile without even breaking into a run. But it's different when they're in the water, when they move at speeds of more than 20 miles an hour. Trying to outswim them is probably not a good idea. Crocodilia are not lizards. They're not even related. They may look similar, but these two are completely separate orders. Archosaurs have two lineages. One includes birds and dinosaurs, and another one includes crocodiles. Lizards have nothing to do with them, the snobs. Alligators and crocodiles are basically the same. Here's another myth. They do come from the same family and look pretty similar, but they had their last common ancestor 65 million years ago. That's a long, long time ago, back when the primates diverged from species such as bats. They look similar because they have an excellent body structure to survive. It means evolution didn't have to add or remove anything to change that. Sharks can't smell a single drop of your blood from miles away. Whew! They do have a highly developed and enlarged brain area that's in charge of smelling odors, true, that allows some of them to detect very small amounts of blood in the water, like a drop in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. But the ocean is so much bigger, and it's not that calm, which means it will take the odor away. Sometimes, though, when the currents are favorable and the day is good, a shark will smell the potential prey from a couple of football fields away, but not miles. Now, that thing about sharks can't survive if they stop swimming, that's only partially true. Sharks breathe only when they're swimming because that's when they push water over the gills. That's true for some of the shark species, but there are many others that can pump water over the gills and get oxygen without swimming. For example, bottom-dwelling nurse sharks. Now, sharks don't have swim bladders. That means they'll sink to the bottom if they stop swimming. But their bodies are adjusted to such conditions, which means rapid descents or ascents won't really harm them. The asteroid belt isn't that dangerous, at least not like in those movies where spaceships are flying through a dense and chaotic field of rocks smashing into each other. The asteroid belt is a zone that's 200 million to 300 million miles away from the Sun. It's a very isolated and lonely void with a lot of space in between. If you pulled all those asteroids from that belt together, you'd get a mass that's maybe 4% of our Moon. That's why astronauts get really excited when they see just one asteroid smashing into one another. At least something's happening there. Your brain can grow new cells. Well, that's kind of true and false at the same time. Most parts of your brain aren't capable of growing new neurons, but some areas can do it. For example, a part called the hippocampus. It's a very important region of the brain for remembering things, learning, regulating how much we eat, and some other vital biological functions. Many other animal species can regrow brain cells across the whole brain, but that doesn't work for us. Some scientists think it might be because we live longer than many other species, which requires a memory we can depend on. Now, that's why the human brain had to find a way to collect experiences across a long span of years. So, new neurons in the hippocampus, for example, could be there for making new memories and learning new things rather than just remembering the things from the past. Those new brain cells help your brain cultivate your past and use it to chart your future. Or just get yourself an elephant. They never forget. Now, cartoons might show it differently, but mice are not actually that into cheese. This myth occurred during the Middle Ages. At that time, many foods rats and mice like way more than cheese were out of their reach. For example, people would store grains in jars or keep meat hanging. But cheese usually matured hidden in cupboards or shelves. Rats and mice could easily get to these spots. So, people would usually find them there, eating not what they liked the best, but what was within their reach. Now, dogs don't see the world in black and white. They do distinguish colors, but not as well as we do. We have 3 types of cones in our eyes, while dogs only have 2 of those. Cones are special photoreceptors that help us perceive colors. Dogs can see certain colors, such as blue and yellow, better than the rest, and they can hardly see red and green. Dogs' mouths are by no means cleaner than humans. They have over 600 kinds of bacteria in their mouths, and their saliva doesn't have any healing properties. They don't sweat through their tongues either. When dogs pant, their tongues hang out, so people think that's how they sweat. But in reality, most sweat glands are on their paw pads and all over their body. They pant to evaporate extra moisture from their nasal passages, tongues, and the lining of their lungs. Panting is also another way to cool down. Opossums have some pretty cool abilities. They have a good memory and immunity to most snakes' venom. They're also very social. But, contrary to popular belief, they don't sleep while hanging by their tails. These animals have strong tails, true, and it makes them excellent climbers. But they don't have the necessary muscle structure to hold such a position for a long time. Now, bats are not blind. They are nocturnal animals and might not see well during the day, but their vision is 3 times better than ours during the night. They do lack color receptors, but people can't see colors in low light either. Bats also use echolocation, which is locating things by the sound waves they reflect to detect small insects in the air. Chameleons have the ability to change the colors on their body, but they don't do it just to blend in with their surroundings. They do it to communicate with others of their kind or to regulate the body temperature, not to camouflage themselves. When these animals are in their natural state, they mostly resemble branches or leaves. Now, it sure looks like it, but rhino horns aren't made of bone. They're made of keratin, the same material you can find in your fingernails and hair. A horn is not attached to the rhino's skull. Instead, it's like a very, very compacted mass of hair. It grows throughout the rhino's lifetime, just like our nails and hair. The horn also looks like something a rhino can use for its defense, but that's not always the case. Some animals use their teeth to protect themselves against their enemies. No wonder the teeth on their lower jaws are so sharp. If you press the snooze button in the morning, you're not actually going to get those extra 10 minutes of sleep. It sure feels good to postpone getting up and staying in the warm bed at that moment, but the snooze button makes you feel more tired instead of providing you with extra rest. You see, your brain believes it's going to fall asleep again, which is why it will get harder and harder for you to get up when the alarm rings for the 2nd or 5th time. In the long run, the snooze button may mess with your ability to get high-quality deep sleep. Now, when you mention desserts, I always think of chocolate. Oh wait, I did a boo-boo. Let's start that again. When you mention deserts, most people picture endless sandy areas, hot and dry. But you should define deserts not by temperatures, but by a lack of precipitation. Most of the well-known deserts across the world are indeed hot, but some are extremely cold. For example, there are polar deserts in northern Greenland. Can we talk about chocolate some more? No? Okay. Well, here's another one. Lightning won't strike the same place twice. Not really. In fact, lightning can and often does strike the same spot repeatedly. So, if you get caught in a thunderstorm, better look around. Instead of hiding in the place already struck by lightning, try to find some shelter and avoid touching anything metal. You won't see an owl turning its head a full 360 degrees, even though it may look like the bird is doing it. Instead of eyeballs, owls have eye tubes. These tubes go far back into their skulls. In other words, owls have their eyes fixed in place. That's why they have to turn their heads when they want to see what's going on around them. They can't make a full circle with their necks, but they come very close, 270 degrees, which is 3/4 of a full rotation. Not bad. Cats don't only purr when they feel content and happy. They can also do it if they're sick, scared, or even angry. Despite all stereotypes, these felines don't gracefully land on their feet every time they fall. True, they do have the so-called righting reflex. A cat has a vestibular apparatus inside its inner ear, which is the natural balancing system the animal uses to orient itself. With the help of this system, a cat can quickly figure out how to rotate its head so that the body can follow. In the end, the animal lands on its feet, but this reflex doesn't work every time. Elephants don't use their trunks as a drinking straw. When an elephant is thirsty, it pulls some water into its trunk, then brings it to its mouth and funnels the water inside. In other words, when these animals drink water, it doesn't go through their trunks, the same as people don't drink through their noses. Well, most people. Elephants have huge ears, but they can also listen with their feet. When they want to examine some faraway noise, elephants freeze and lean forward so that most of their weight is on their front legs. Sometimes they even lift one of their front feet. They rely on seismic communication, which means they detect sound waves that travel not through the air, but through the ground. There are many myths about your brain, like its right part is creative and the left one is logical. But your brain doesn't work this way. It's not strictly divided into parts that exclusively cover only one area, like logic or creativity or something else. Actions you take and things you go through are the results of the activity of your entire brain. The cerebral cortex is the part of your brain that consists of two halves, but both of them are connected to many other areas that make up the rest of the brain. So, no neurons in the left part of your brain will turn you into a computer whiz, and those in the right half won't turn you into a poet. Now, you may think your brain shuts off when you fall asleep, but it doesn't. It has slow activity rates when you're in a deep sleep and becomes more active when you're dreaming. During this stage, your brain's activity is almost the same as it is when you're fully awake. Now, not to freak you out, but you don't see with your eyes, hear with your ears, or feel with your skin. For example, you're washing your face, but your skin itself doesn't have sensors for wetness. Your brain uses a combination of multiple sources of information, including temperature, touch, or your earlier experience. That's why you feel that your face is wet. Your brain creates that sensation after analyzing all kinds of different information. Your brain doesn't actually react to things going on around you. It may seem like that. You see a cute little puppy and it makes you smile. Your friend makes some silly joke and you blush. But neurons in your brain don't just wait until something happens to react to that. Instead, they're trying to guess what might happen next all the time. Your brain starts analyzing your actions and the experiences you've gone through even before it gets data from your ears, nose, eyes, and other organs. Your brain is always working to predict what the world will be like in the next moment and what you will do in this world. So even though you're not actually reacting to the world, This process of prediction is happening so effortlessly and quickly that you feel like you do. Moving on, Jupiter doesn't technically orbit the Sun. When a smaller and less massive space object circles a bigger one, it doesn't travel in a perfect circle. Instead, both of these objects follow their respective elliptical orbits around a barycenter, which is their common center of gravity. Earth is way smaller than the Sun. That's why the barycenter it shares with our star is really close to the center of the Sun. That's why we can't see that our planet's orbit is a little bit off-kilter. But Jupiter is the biggest planet in our solar system. Its weight is more than twice as great as that of the rest of the planets, asteroids, moons, and comets combined. That's why the barycenter of Jupiter and the Sun is a little further from the star's center, around 30,000 miles above the surface. Okay, can we go back to the chocolate? Well, maybe next time. Now, at some earlier stages of research, scientists reconstructed the megalodon looking like a bigger, just a little more dangerous, version of a great white shark. Movies then followed suit, added a couple of details on their own, and ta-da! We've got a marine giant that could grow up to 90 feet long. Well, hold on. Megalodons were usually between 50 and 55 feet, sometimes growing up to 60 feet. For comparison, a bowling lane is 60 feet long, a school bus is around 45 feet, and an average person is 5 feet 10 inches tall. So yeah, not bad megalodon, but still not 90 feet. Its weight was around 50 to 60 tons, which is something like 10 adult elephants or even a Boeing 737. That's just their females though. The ladies were almost twice as big as the males. Another movie versus reality thing. The megalodon had nothing to do with a great white shark. The closest they could be is cousins, because megalodon, in fact, is the last descendant of a completely different lineage of sharks. Plus, its kind is around 3 times bigger than an average great white. It has a shorter nose and a much flatter jaw that almost looks like it's squashed. Also, Meg's pectoral fins are longer than those of the great white sharks. Ancient predators ate a lot, so they needed something to support their weight. They both had an excellent sense of smell, though, so even in prehistoric times, it wasn't a good idea to go swimming with a chunk of raw meat in hand. And it certainly isn't safe now. Whether the Meg's hiding somewhere in the depths, which some still believe is true, or it's gone forever, younger cousins will be there waiting. Also, both of them like to go after big marine mammals, so they would certainly have things to do together. That is, until the Meg got moody and accidentally ate its friend. You never know. These guys had a different hunting style. Great whites prefer to dive straight toward their prey and find the softest spots, like exposed legs or underbelly. Megalodon aimed for the fins and tail, because of its almost 10-foot jaws and what's considered to be the strongest bite ever. Its teeth could pierce almost anything. Sometimes an entire tooth would be found embedded in the bone of some bigger animal, such as a whale. Without the main parts they use for swimming, poor sea animals were then helpless and unable to escape. Yet whales were just a smaller part of the megalodon's diet. Seals, sea cows, squids, dolphins, other sharks, the good old Meg probably wouldn't say no to some random school of smaller fish swimming into its mouth either. Nothing better than a good snack after a big tasty dinner. Even those giant turtles weren't safe within their thick shells. The Meg probably took those as a dare challenge on a daily basis. Such a diverse diet, and in big amounts. Megalodon would eat about 2,500 pounds of food every day. No wonder it dominated the ocean. Almost 300 teeth in 5 rows, and we're talking about sharp chompers that could grow up to 7 inches long. Even its name stands for giant tooth. Hey, I'm thinking maybe it had a cousin, orthodontia, which means either crooked teeth or deep pockets. Still, Megalodon would change thousands of teeth over a lifetime. Since Meg's teeth weren't that strong, they would often fall out. Then it would get new ones within 1 to 2 days, so it could continue its hunting sessions without any serious interruptions. The same thing happens with modern sharks as well. New teeth replace damaged or worn out ones. Those teeth falling out were the only thing that helped scientists do any research on the megalodon at all. They found them all around the world. Yep, megalodons were quite some travelers. They lived in all oceans, and their fossils were found on all continents except Antarctica. What, too cold? Since their skeletons were not made of bone but of cartilage, teeth are the only evidence they've ever even existed. They gave scientists an insight into a lot of things, including size. Even with modern sharks, scientists determine their size by the dimensions of only one tooth, and do the same with the meg. Megalodon had the strongest bite of all living creatures on Earth. It would definitely be fun to see the clash between the meg and, say, T-Rex. Sadly, they missed their chance to meet and establish some long-term friendship since dinosaurs went extinct over 60 million years ago. Meg, on the other hand, terrified all the inhabitants of the seas and oceans from 23 to 2.5 million years ago. Where could Megalodon live these days? Well, it would probably love the places modern sharks go to, such as Florida, Hawaii, Brazil, South Africa, or some other tropical paradise. When you think about it, it's not bad at all. Meg, take me with you! Meg itself didn't have any serious competition or a natural enemy, but its infants were too weak to defend themselves. That's why the apex predator had to choose warm, shallow waters with no strong currents to raise its babies. Those, by the way, were around 6.5 feet long, not quite tiny themselves. Scientists actually found some of their juveniles' teeth, so it seems like part of their nursery areas was the coast of Panama, and that's 10 million years old. Okay, time to meet with one of Megalodon's potential rivals, the mighty sperm whale. 45 to 60 feet long, the size sure makes it quite an adversary. Modern sperm whales don't have such big teeth, but their ancestors, which lived around 13 million years ago, were well packed. The largest tooth found was 5 inches wide and 14 inches long. That's something like the biggest soda bottle out there. That would make an interesting combat. Here, we're talking about this giant marine predator, but this is not the only intriguing ancient animal that wandered the oceans. In fact, sharks are some of the oldest creatures on our planet, more ancient than insects, mammals, dinosaurs, even trees. Mass extinction events wiped out most life on Earth. Giant asteroids fell on its surface, continents split up, and so many other things happened. But sharks were there, alive, persevering, apparently with no contact with the outside world, just chilling and doing their thing. The spiny shark was actually one of the first animals with a jaw. Not that it could do much with that jaw, since it was only around 12 inches long. Meg wouldn't even bother around this one, and it wasn't even a real shark, it just looked like one. If you ever wondered how a combination of eel and shark would look like, well, here it is. Eel shark preferred freshwater, was up to 3 feet long, and went extinct around 200 million years ago. Since dinosaurs appeared around 230 million years ago, the eel shark was probably there to give them warm welcome, prepare a buffet, but the dinosaurs had unfortunately mistaken it for dessert. Now, this predator would get some real screams on a nice sandy beach during a spring break if it was still alive, the Ginsu shark. It was nicknamed after Ginsu knives for a huge mouth of almost 500 razor-sharp teeth. One of this monster shark's hobbies was to go after big turtles. Okay, now seriously, what's with that shark turtle thing? Scissor-toothed sharks. Now we're talking. These guys lived around 300 million years ago and had some strangely shaped heads. The weirdest part were their jaws. This shark didn't shed old and worn-out teeth, but kept growing new ones at the back. Those in the front were then pushed forward, and with age, the shark got a really strange scissor-tooth look. Scientists are still unsure why it had to be like that. Hey, time to call in the orthodont. Even during the Meg's long reign, our favorite ancient predator still wasn't the only scary giant shark in town. For instance, I can't pronounce its name, so I'll just call it Mr. C. Unfortunately, not enough of its fossils were found to get more information, but some research says it had teeth more than 5 inches long. That also implies it could probably grow to be 20 feet long. Oh, and if it only left just a couple more teeth around, I guess the Meg wouldn't be the only movie star from those times. So close, see, so close.
Hey Mythbusters! Today we're debunking some classic space myths. Hop on the next space shuttle and let's get to the bottom of these tales once and for all. Picture this. You're floating weightlessly in space, sipping on a cup of delicious hot chocolate, when a peculiar thought pops into your head. Can you scream in outer space? And if yes, would anyone hear that scream?
If you've watched the movie Alien, then you know the answer to this one. You can't hear sounds in outer space.
It's not that sounds don't exist.
It's just that you can't hear them.
There's no one better to clarify this myth than Chris Hadfield. He's been on a couple of spacewalks during his life as an astronaut. And once you're out there in the darkness of space, you can't hear anything.
All you hear is silence. Complete silence.
But hey, just around the corner is a massive ball of explosion, aka the sun. We just can't hear the explosions happening because there's no medium for sound to travel through. It would be quite uncomfortable for an astronaut, though, if they could hear all the noises going on in outer space. Now, imagine you're zipping through space, feeling like a futuristic superhero, when a shooting star passes by your side. But wait, is it really a star? Unfortunately, shooting stars are not stars at all. They are small space rocks known as meteoroids, entering Earth's atmosphere and creating a stunning light show. Oh, and since we're debunking myths, let's head straight for another one. You've probably heard that meteors only crash into Earth on extremely rare occasions, like once every dinosaur extinguishing apocalypse. That's not true. Scientists estimate that about 48 tons of meteoritic material fall on Earth each day. But almost all of this material is vaporized in Earth's atmosphere. The bright trail we see in the night sky is what we popularly call a shooting star. Next time you make a wish upon a shooting star, remember, you're actually hoping on a tiny piece of space debris. It's not so romantic after all. Can we or can we not fly into the stratosphere on air balloons? Apparently, we can. The Earth's stratosphere starts relatively close to the ground, about 7 or 8 miles up from the Earth's surface, but it continues a long way up. If you were to fly yourself all the way into the stratosphere with some type of air balloon, just make sure you have really good equipment at hand. You'll need a special suit and some breathing devices because air starts to get pretty thin the higher you get. Of course, if you do go all the way up, you need to get a picture of the Earth's curvature. So take a chest harness with you where you can put a special camera or something like that. And how about you live stream the whole thing? That would be a first! Imagine it's been 102 days since you left Earth. You've adapted well to life in outer space, but something weird is happening to your body. You're getting taller. How is that even possible? Don't stress about it, it's completely normal. The truth of the matter is, you're not getting taller. This is what happens to your body when it's not under the effect of gravity. Our body has natural space between vertebrae and joints. On Earth, this space is almost completely squeezed due to the force of gravity. But in space, your body gets some time off of the pushing force of gravity and begins to stretch more and more. So yes, astronauts can grow up to 3% taller when they're on long missions. And here's a curiosity, NASA has that all covered when they're tailor-making spacesuits, of course. This way, astronauts will always have extra space in their suits. Once astronauts are back on Earth, the anti-gravity effect will wear off. So maybe they'll spend a few days wearing capri pants before it fits perfectly on their bodies again. Never have I ever pictured an airplane door bursting open mid-flight and a bunch of passengers being sucked into the atmosphere like flying feathers. Well, I'm betting most of you have had similar thoughts when getting inside a plane. Now imagine if this were to happen in outer space. Common knowledge says that if an astronaut is sucked out of an airlock, this person would be burnt to a crisp. Brace yourselves, because this is not only true, but the reality of it is way worse. According to astronaut Chris Hadfield, this is what would happen. The part of your body in the shade of the sun would experience temperatures of negative 418 degrees Fahrenheit, while the part of you getting sunlight would burn at around 480 degrees Fahrenheit. Your lungs would collapse, and your blood would start to boil like tea water. So you would burn, freeze, lose your ability to breathe, and boil. Yikes! How many times have you heard that astronauts have to work out every second of every day, otherwise they'll pass out? This is a complete myth. Remember we talked about gravity earlier? Due to the lack of gravity in outer space, our bodies don't have to do any heavy work. Our torsos don't have to sustain the weight of our heads, and we don't have to make any effort to move our legs because, essentially, there's no walking in outer space. Now imagine living like that for 6 months, or even a year of your life. Your muscles could turn into jello. That's why astronauts work out. They'll strap themselves and run on a treadmill, or they'll do some weightlifting in a special machine. This way, their muscles won't feel the lack of gravity too much. They do need to keep hydrated though. You know what? If I was an astronaut, I'd ask NASA if I could take my super soft water flask up into space with me. You've probably heard that space smells like burnt steak or barbecue sauce. Now, as much as this sounds absurd, this myth is more true than it is false. Astronauts obviously can't smell space when they're in it because they can't take off their helmets. They usually smell it once a space vehicle docks and they open up a hatch. Apparently, what causes this smell is the presence of hydrocarbons that float around in space. Who would have thought, huh? Hey smart people, let me ask you a question. Do you really think that if astronauts fly at the speed of light, they won't age a single second? I knew you'd say no. Let's get a few things straight. First of all, we haven't figured out how to operate vehicles at the speed of light. This would require an immense amount of energy, and we don't have the technology to do that. Second, even if we managed to send a human inside a spacecraft that traveled at the speed of light, this person would still age. They would age differently than the people who remained on Earth, that's a fact, but they would still age. Do you lot really think there's such a thing as immortality? Nah. If you've seen the first Avatar, then you certainly remember that humans only managed to get to Pandora because they traveled in cryosleep. In other words, they froze their bodies, put them in a cryobed, and traveled for years without aging. Yes, this sounds amazing, but we still don't have the technology to do that. Our bodies are mainly made out of water, right? And when you freeze water, it expands. That's why you should never leave soda cans unattended in your freezer. Right now, if we froze a person's body, the water inside of it would expand, harming tissues and organs. So no, we can't cryosleep our way into interstellar travel. Not yet, at least. Here's a crazy thought. What would happen if an astronaut took a drone with him on one of their spacewalks? Unless it's a NASA-designed drone, maybe the thing would freeze and burn like humans would if they went into space without a suit. But hey, a person can dream, can't they?
Oceans cover 70% of the Earth. On average, the ocean is 8 Empire State Buildings deep, and less than 5% of its mysterious depths have been explored. It's even possible to find lakes and rivers beneath the ocean. They're denser than the rest of the water surrounding them, so you can clearly see the difference. When the coral is in shallow waters, intense sunlight can damage the algae living inside it. To protect the algae, the coral produces some proteins that act as some kind of sunscreen for it, so they really don't need to spend money on it. Okay, most of the ocean may not be explored, but what we do know is about 20 million tons of gold is dispersed through its dark waters. It's concentrated in really small amounts, which is why it doesn't pay off to mine it. If we could take it out, every person on the planet would get 9 pounds of gold. When sharks need their morning joe, they go to a cafe too. Back in 2002, researchers found an area in the Pacific Ocean called the White Shark Cafe, where great white sharks come during the winter. They simply hang out, tell jokes, and laugh at stories of how many humans they've scared, and then go back to the coast to scare us a little bit more when the weather gets warmer. Hey, have you had a great white latte? Try one. The widest point of the Pacific Ocean goes from Indonesia to Colombia, and at that part it's 12,300 miles across, over 5 times wider than the diameter of the Moon. We might imagine oceans are cold, especially in depths where the temperature is only 40 degrees Fahrenheit. But there's an exception. Water that comes out of hydrothermal vents in the seafloor has a temperature of up to 750 degrees. Humans are the only animals whose brain gets smaller. Yup, as we get older, it tends to shrink. It can do so even because of isolation and loneliness. Other animals, even some of our distant cousins from another side of the family tree, like monkeys and chimpanzees, have no problem with that. I'm guessing television is the probable cause. Our eardrums have nothing to do with the sense of sight, but they still move when we move our eyes. In the average lifetime, our heart beats over 2.5 billion times. I've counted. Our nose can detect over 1 trillion smells, and our lips are hundreds of times more sensitive than the tips of our fingers. 2 of our body parts never stop growing: your nose and your ears. Cockroaches are tough. They can survive harsh conditions and have been around since dinosaurs ruled our planet. But the termite queen beats all that, with a lifespan of 50 years. That's the longest any insect can live. Regular termites live only 1 to 2 years. It's not the water camels store in their humps, but fat. They store water in their bloodstream. Bees can fly really high, more than 29,500 feet, which is even higher than Mount Everest, the tallest mountain on our planet. Sloths are able to hold their breath longer than dolphins. Yup, they slow their heart rates, and they can stay that way for almost 40 minutes. Dolphins have to come to the surface to catch some air every 10 minutes. The moon has volcanoes, and scientists believe these might have been active around 100 million years ago, when dinosaurs still ruled our planet. Wow, the view must have been magnificent. There are watermelons the size of a grape. Cucamelons, if you prefer, mouse melons, actually look like really small watermelons, but at the same time have a citrus flavor. Not just mouse melons, there's also the kangaroo mouse. This animal doesn't feel the need to drink water. It lives in the Nevada desert, and since its habitat is really dry, it simply learned to quench its thirst through seeds it likes to eat. You may think parking is expensive in the area where you live, but it's probably cheaper than a spot you'd pay in Hong Kong. Just a 135 square foot spot placed in front of the center, which is the 5th tallest building in the city, was purchased for almost $1 million. I'll take a bus ticket, please. Speaking of expensive, and I was, the world's priciest hot dog is $169, and you can try it out in Seattle, Washington. I don't have the money, but I am a little intrigued, must admit. An Australian barista set a world record for the most cappuccinos made in 1 hour. 420 of them. That's really a Java jive. You can taste garlic with your feet. Rub a clove right in your feet, of course take the socks off beforehand, and wait for it. The chemical responsible for its unique smell can be absorbed through the skin even though the clove was never in your mouth. By the way, lobsters can try out the same experiment. Well, they actually taste any food with their feet. Okay, researchers have found many things that are evidence of prehistoric animals or our human ancestors that lived thousands of years ago, like bones, teeth, stone tools, and a piece of chewing gum, dating from almost 10,000 years ago. In Tibet, there are black diamond apples that aren't green or red, but dark purple. The place where they grow has plenty of ultraviolet light over the day, while the temperatures drastically go down during the night, which makes the apple skin get a darker color. Australia has a lake of naturally bubblegum pink color. The unusual color is there because of the pigment from a certain type of algae living there. Clouds look so fluffy, like they're made of giant puffs of cotton, but the average one weighs around 1.1 million pounds, so please stay up there. A farmer from Iowa got hiccups that didn't stop for the next 68 years. First, hiccuping was about 40 times a minute, and after a while, 20 times. He actually spent 70% of his life hiccuping. 1 million seconds is somewhere around 12 days, and 1 billion seconds is almost 32 years. Nothing unusual here, just a little bit of good old math that reminds us how cool the time is. Okay, sharks may be scarier than humans, but our teeth are just as strong as theirs, just smaller. Until the beginning of the 19th century, Americans actually thought tomatoes were poisonous. So many tasty meals they missed believing that. Yup, farmers discovered not just people have regional accents, but cows also have different moods according to the area where they live. Hey, do cows get moody? Giraffes have a tongue that's up to 20 inches long. Ooh, ice cream maybe? Actually, they can bend trees with their tongues. There's a specific type of jellyfish that's actually immortal. Hey, I can see that as a logo for a life insurance company. The Earth is orbiting the Sun, but not at a fixed speed rate. We don't sense it, but it's slowing as time goes by, so our day will become 25 hours long in about 175 million years. So don't plan that extra hour in your schedule just yet. Space is huge, duh. But there's obviously lots of empty spots since there are more trees, 3 trillion, on our planet than stars in the Milky Way, only about 300 to 400 billion. Wow. When someone mentions the biggest desert, you probably picture the endless sandy surface of the Sahara, burning under the hot sun. Well, not quite. The biggest desert is the Antarctic Polar Desert, which covers over 5.5 million square miles in Buffalo. Nah, Antarctica. Sounds strange at first, but the definition says a desert is a place that gets less than 10 inches of precipitation annually. Still, it doesn't say if it has to be hot. Ostriches don't actually hide their heads in the sand. When they sense danger, they lower down their head, neck, and body to the ground, which makes them a little bit less visible to predators. Their light-colored neck blends in with the sand, so it only looks like their head is hidden down there. The first commercial passenger flight happened at the beginning of the 20th century. It was a 23-minute flight that cost $400, which is about $8,500 today, and the plane flew between 2 cities in Florida. A famous Egyptian ruler, Cleopatra, lived closer to cell phones than to the time when the Great Pyramids of Egypt were completed. Well, that's a gap. Speaking of cell phones, every 2 minutes there are more photos taken than in the entire 19th century. Okay, let's add one more to those statistics. Cheese!
A human year is not the same as a dog year. You might have thought that dogs age 7 times faster than we do, but it's not that simple. A dog that's been around for 1 year is, in fact, already 31. It will most likely even have its own little puppies running around. But here's where it gets tricky. 2 human years don't necessarily mean that your dog is 62 either. Your buddy will need to be around 4 in our years before it reaches old age. A 4-year-old dog will be 50, but a 7-year-old dog will be 62, and an 8-year-old dog will only be 64. So, they age faster, but also slower and slower as time passes by. The next time you're celebrating your best bud's birthday, be sure to put lots of candles on the cake and buy even more presents than you normally would. A common misconception is that dogs are colorblind. They're not, but they don't see color exactly as we do. They have trouble distinguishing between their reds and greens. It all just looks like a mash of gray, brown, blue, and even yellowy tones. That's because their eyes lack one of 3 photoreceptors needed to perceive colors fully. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. Wrong. Because of their old age, they might need more persistence from you, but it's not impossible. The key here is to be as positive as you can. If you see they're not feeling up to it right now, that's okay. Let them rest. And in a little bit, you can pick the training session back up. Reward still needs to be a big part of the whole ordeal. After Max successfully speaks, give it its favorite biscuit. Then, it'll speak on command whenever you ask it to. That dog has shoes on. They might seem unnecessary, but today the weather's 90 degrees outside. Imagine walking with your bare feet on asphalt during this heat. You'd feel like you're stepping on lava, and so would your pup. Some dogs are better equipped to handle different weather conditions, but dog shoes can prevent your little buddy from harming its paws. It's the same during winter. When it's freezing cold, you wouldn't just walk around without a jacket on, so make sure your buddy is warm too. Dogs with a lot of fur don't need to get their hair cut to feel lighter. They have what's called an undercoat. In winter, it gets thicker, which gives your buddy an extra layer of protection from the cold. Then, during springtime, your dog will shed some of its fur. It's that same undercoat that will keep your dog comfy during hotter days. When you shave a dog's fur, the new one coming in might get curly or entangled. It might just be better to leave it as is. You can also find different alternatives to keep them cool. Keep it in the shade when they're out, and always bring a bottle of cold water with you, so your buddy's always refreshed. At home, you can put damp towels for them to lie on. If you have a garden, you can also turn its sprinklers on and let Max run free. It'll exercise and have lots of fun. Not all dogs are great swimmers, but all dogs love swimming. If yours can't swim all that well, it might be because it has a bulky chest and a large flat head. In fact, it might not even be able to stay afloat. Get it a swimming vest designed especially for dogs. Some people might say a slightly open window is enough to keep a dog in the car. This isn't true, because after spending just a few minutes in a heated or cold car might mean severe health implications for your best friend. Some states even let you let a dog out of the car if you see it in there, to let it breathe. If your dog can't stand mail carriers, it might be because it's trying to protect you. They bark because they're trying to alert you, their pack leader, that the vicious mail carrier is coming. You can fix this by introducing them to one another. This way, your dog will recognize them as a friend and not a villain. Unlike you, your dog isn't yawning because it's sleepy. Yawning is a way for them to show anxiety. If it doesn't like cats and there's one around, it could yawn. Or maybe there's a new person in the house and Max isn't feeling comfortable in their presence. Or you take your dog to a play date, but they're not getting along. Max keeps yawning because he's getting upset. Yawning is also a way to show you it's running out of patience. It might be time for both of you to leave. Dogs eat grass when they're sick, but this isn't always the case. Catching your dog eating grass when you've been talking to your friend for way longer than you should have probably means it's just bored. They do it to be rebellious too, or just because it's fun. It won't be a problem if the grass isn't treated. Either way, just make sure it doesn't eat too much of it. Otherwise, head out to the vet. Even a little bit of chocolate is poisonous for your pup and should be kept hidden away at all times. This includes cocoa powder and baker's chocolate. This applies to cats too. If you suspect that your pet has eaten a large amount of chocolate, take it to the vet's office immediately. Well-trained dogs will do what they're supposed to and obey commands, but don't think they'll never bite you. It can act out of emotion. Imagine your dog's scared. You've put it in an uncomfortable situation with lots of new faces. This has been going on for a while, and Max isn't able to control his emotions anymore. So, a new person tries to reach it to give it a pet and gets punished. Nothing harsh, but it was unexpected. Maybe it felt like it needed to be defensive. Thinking they're protecting and guarding you is another reason why a dog might bite. Or if they're feeling too intimidated by whoever it might be. You've got two dogs and you're about to enter your house. One of them is waiting for you in its bed. It doesn't make a big whoop about it rather than wagging its tail. The other one comes running to the door. It whimpers, jumps, and wags its whole body while running in circles around you. This doesn't mean it loves you more. It just means it's not properly trained yet. Tail wagging doesn't always mean your dog is excited. You can observe a dog's tail to understand what it's feeling. If it holds its tail high but isn't moving it, it's alert but also trying to assert its leadership. Still held high, the tail is moving now. It means the feeling's changed a bit. It's alert but happy. It's still trying to show it's the boss here. But at least it's feeling excited now. When its tail is between the legs, your dog's feeling afraid. Or, if there's an alpha dog around, it might mean your buddy admits its leadership. A tail that's held straight out means the dog is taking in new information, feeling the room. It's not reacting though, it'll stay neutral while doing this. If a dog's tail is wagging fast, it means excitement. The faster they wag their tail, the more excited they are. A slow wag conveys insecurity. It might be because of another dog or person. Now, imagine your dog is wagging its entire body. You even see its hips wagging. This means it's friendly. It might happen when you're in the elevator, and it spots its best friend from the apartment complex. The worst wag of them all is an extremely fast vertical wagging tail. When doing this, your dog can be mean to others. It might be feeling territorial over you. It's best to remove yourself from the situation. If your dog's tail is wagging to the right, it means it's more relaxed. And a left wagging tail means stress.
Alright, check this out. Water boils faster when you add a bit of salt. Myth. It doesn't make any difference, and even if it does, it may take longer for the water to boil. But it might make your pasta taste better. Just saying. Bats are blind. Not true. The myth probably comes from the fact that they're nocturnal creatures and have extraordinary hearing abilities. They chase mostly when it's dark and rely on a thing called echolocation, but it doesn't mean they're blind. Their eyes aren't useless, they're just adjusted to low light conditions. A blue whale is so big, its tongue can weigh as much as a big elephant. True. Yep, these fellas are huge. You lose more heat through your head. Nah. The real reason why people believe it is because when it's cold, our head is the only part we're most likely to keep uncovered. If we went outside wearing just a t-shirt, we'd lose heat through our arms, not to mention legs, hips, and other parts. So, wear a hat, guys. Tongue Map says we have different parts for different tastes. Not really. There are individual taste buds that sense certain flavors more than they do with others, but it doesn't mean one area can taste sweet better than the other. Studies showed all mouth areas have taste buds sensitive to all tastes. Hey, check out this tongue map for the blue whale. Looks like she's partial to plankton. Dinosaurs were giant. Well, that's false. Movies show them as huge scaly lizards, but no. First off, there were many smaller dinosaur species, and some of them were as small as a turkey or a pigeon. Plus, some dinos, like T-Rex, were even covered with feathers, especially at the early stages of their lives. Oxygen is colorless. Partially true. In gas form, it has no color, but in solid or liquid form, it has a sky blue shade. Chameleons change color because they want to match their surroundings. Myth. That would probably be a very tiring thing to do. In reality, some other things like mood, temperature, or the amount of light they get affect their color. When chameleons relax and stretch cells, crystals that are inside of them are affected by the light. These animals use crystals to communicate with each other. So, for example, darker shades show that they're not in such a good mood. It's more like they kind of feel aggressive. So I think I'll back off here. Neanderthals aren't our ancestors either, even though they lived with modern humans at the same time at one point, but mostly in different areas of our planet. So they're not just a stage of human development, but a different lineage. They were also pretty creative. They used fire, made tools, ate medicinal plants, cleaned their teeth, and so many more things similar to our species. Neanderthals probably went extinct because of harsh climate changes. Turkeys can blush. That one is true. They're just like us when it comes to this. When angry, excited, or even feeling bad, the skin on their necks and heads turns red, just like my big brother. Black holes are not really holes, as the name may imply. They are very dense objects with an extremely strong gravitational pull. Flamingos are such cool animals. True. They bend their legs at the knee. Myth. They actually bend them at the ankles, since the knees are closer to the body as well as covered in feathers. Supermarket apples are fresh. Maybe yes, but maybe not. They can be up to 1 year old, since they're often picked between August and November. After that, they're covered in wax and dried in hot air. Finally, they're sent into cold storage, and after 6 to 12 months, we see them on the supermarket shelves. Bottled water has an expiration date? True. But that doesn't mean the water is the thing that expires. The bottle does. The plastic starts to leak into the water and some unwanted chemicals appear. The tea bag wasn't actually planned. True. In the early 20th century, Thomas Sullivan filled small silken bags with samples of tea leaves and sent them to his customers. The idea was to open them and toss tea leaves in the hot water. Many customers thought they were supposed to put those bags into the teapot without opening them. The tea bag went through some improvements, got string and a paper tag at the end, and the new unplanned invention was ready. Lightning will never strike the same spot twice. Not true. The Empire State Building was once struck 8 times in only 24 minutes. There was a terrible storm, and nothing could or can generally keep lightning away from the place that got hit. If a struck place has features that attracted the lightning in the first place, like terrain shape, standing water, or height, it may attract it once again. You have so much DNA in your body that you can actually stretch it from the Sun to Pluto and back. True. And not just once, 17 times. Of course, you're not going to look the same after you do that. Crocodiles are one of the oldest species in the world. Yup. They have been around for 200 million years already. Like my neighbors down the street. Opossums sleep while hanging by their tails. You can see that in cartoons and some photos, but in general, they don't. Their tails are really strong, so these animals can grip branches and hold their weight, but only for short periods. Adults are really too heavy to stay in this position for too long, so they wouldn't get much rest. Goldfish have a 3-second-long memory. Nope. Those colorful fish are actually really smart. One study showed goldfish could tell the difference between two classical songs. They're not quick learners, true, but after over 100 sessions, they did it, which wouldn't be possible if their memory could really last only for 3 seconds. One type of salamander, you can read that on your own, go ahead, can extend its tongue over half of its body length in only 7 milliseconds. True. That's 50 times faster than a blink of an eye. Ooh, gotta be fast to catch that tongue map. People can multitask. Not true. Checking emails, talking on the phone, cooking, it seems like doing several things at the same time saves time, but research shows multitasking is not quite possible. Our brain is wired to do one thing at a time. So when we think we're multitasking, it's actually switching tasks, which can take even longer rather than saving us some time, as well as whittling down our attention spans. Earth is not the only planet with water. NASA discovered Jupiter had an ocean with twice as much water as we have on our planet. It's right under a layer of ice. Even Mars has some liquid water flowing. Also, the Earth is round. Or is it? Technically, it has flattened poles, together with a bulge at the equator. That way, it has an irregular shape of an ellipsoid. Zombies are not made up. True. Okay, humans can't turn into ones as we see in movies, but the animal kingdom has its zombies. For instance, there's a type of fungus that takes over ants, spreading specific chemicals in their brains. That makes an ant leave its family looking for the place where this fungus wants to live. The world's biggest waterfall is under the ocean. Oh, very true. It's in the Nordic seas. The cold seawater is denser than the warm waterfall. The drop is almost 2 miles long. The smallest wasp in the world is not bigger than an amoeba. True. This wasp has the same body parts as other bugs, like eyes, wings, brain, legs, and more, but it's just 0.008 inches long, which, in most cases, makes it smaller than one-celled organisms we also know as amoebas. Snow can only be white. Not true. And I'm not talking about the snow near fire hydrants. For example, there are some mountains with pink snow, like the Sierra Nevada in California. Its color is caused by a certain type of algae living there. Aurora Borealis has a sister. True. It's called Aurora Australis, and you can see it in the southern hemisphere. The best time to see it is in winter. Over 99% of atoms is empty space. True. If we collected all the people in the world together and removed all the empty space between the atoms out of them, the population of Earth would fit into the size of an average orange. I think we should try that. Then I could finally get a seat on the bus. Dolphins communicate and call each other by names. True. They use specific vocal whistles to identify each other. So long, and thanks for all the fish. The toilet flushes in different directions when on different hemispheres. Nope. The direction is the same whether the toilet is in Australia or France. Really? A snail can have a pretty extended nap. True. Some snails can sleep for around 3 years in a row. Sharks smell just one tiny drop of blood from miles away. Not quite. Sure, their brain region in charge of smelling odors is enlarged, but the ocean is really big. Plus, it takes time for odor molecules to spread in liquid. On a pretty good day with favorable currents, a shark may smell the prey from a distance of a couple of football fields away, but not miles. Finally, penguins propose to their significant other. True. They're monogamous, and after choosing a mate, the male gives the female a pebble to show his affection. Ah. So, if you have some matches and they've gotten wet, don't waste time drying them. The chemical compound can be changed by water and the matches will simply not work. To cure hypothermia, don't get into a hot tub. Fill some bottles with warm water and put them under your armpits. That will help you warm up better than the hot tub for sure. When you're thirsty and don't have much water, don't save it to last you longer. This can lead to further dehydration. Instead, drink every drop of it and try to find more water ASAP. So hydration is a must no matter the weather. But the idea that drinking hot liquids will warm you better is a myth. No amount of hot liquid can raise your body temperature. Plus, you can drink cold water faster than a hot drink, and that will help with hydration. Never poke a beehive because its inhabitants will get defensive. You think? And trying to escape by jumping into a lake or a river won't do any good. Bees will wait for you to resurface and attack you. After you poke the hive, run as fast as you can and don't look back. Sucking the venom out of a snake bite wound is likely to introduce more bacteria into the wound and even poison the person trying to help. Instead, take a photo of the snake, lie down while waiting for help, and try to stay calm. One of the most logical things to do when you are cold is to layer up. Now this is mostly true, but not if you put on cotton clothes. When cotton gets wet, it loses all its beneficial properties and can make you feel much colder. You should always wear wool clothes because they're much better insulators. Never drink cactus water. It can give you a nasty stomachache and even paralyze you, unless it's a fishhook cactus. But even then, it's too risky. Instead, try eating the fruits from the plant. They're full of juice. When you're chased by some predator, never jump off a cliff into the water. This is much more dangerous than meeting the predator. If you jump from a high place, the water surface will feel as hard as concrete, or the water might be too shallow and you'll hit the bottom. GPS is not the best navigational tool. It's reliable and easy to use, but it can break down. So you should learn how to use a map and a compass. They won't let you down if you know how to use them correctly. A puddle of water might look bad and smell a bit, but water is water, right? Well, unfortunately, boiling it can eliminate the bacteria, but not the heavy metals it contains. Those can cause serious health problems. A better option is to find some stream water to boil. Consuming random berries in the forest is dangerous. First, you need to check if they smell okay. If they have a pear or almond smell, avoid them. Next, get one, rub it on your forearm, and wait for 15 minutes. If your skin starts to itch, don't eat those berries. If you bite on a berry and it has a bitter, tingly, or soapy taste, spit it out. Never suck on stones to get some water. It is believed that when you're doing it, your body produces more saliva and it hydrates you. This is not true. If you don't drink water, nothing will help. Even worse, you can choke on the stone. Eating raw meat and fish is really dangerous. Yeah, we eat sushi, but it's normally saltwater fish, which is mostly safe. In the wilderness, always cook meat and fish before eating it. Moss doesn't only grow on south-facing surfaces. It can grow anywhere, depending on the temperature. So never use it to navigate. You'll be better off using some more reliable sources. For example, keep in mind that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. Following birds to find water is a myth. They could be flying anywhere. Land animals like deer are a much better option. They usually know where the source of water is. Many survivalists claim that you should eat whatever animals around you are eating. Bad news. This is entirely false. Birds and squirrels consume berries that are super dangerous for us, but they don't harm them. And some animals eat poisonous plants to become venomous. Now, if a leech attaches to you, never burn it off. This can cause the animal to basically throw up directly inside your skin and cause massive infection. Try using a credit card to break the seal and remove the leech. Or if you're brave enough to wait for an hour, the parasite will fall off once it's fed. No matter how strong you are, punching a shark in the nose will not save you. It's a common belief that they have tons of nerves in the nose, and somehow that makes them vulnerable, but it has been proven wrong. If you find yourself in shark-infested waters, punching the animal in the gills or the eyes is much more effective than hitting the nose. After spending some time in the forest, you realize you're lost, and the first thing you start looking for is food. But you can actually live 6 weeks without food. The first thing you must do is find water and shelter from the elements. Do this and worry about the food later. Don't play possum when you encounter a bear. If it's a black bear, you won't be playing for long. Soon it'll be a reality. You should play possum only if it's a brown bear. Now remember the saying, if it's black, fight back. If it's brown, lay down. If it's white, good night. You shouldn't swim parallel to the shore if you find yourself in a rip current. Instead, try swimming at an angle away from the current and toward the shore. Remember, you shouldn't feel too much resistance while swimming. When you're lost, don't spend all your energy trying to make a fire. Try building a shelter first. This can protect you from the elements, and you'll have a place to rest and sleep after a long, exhausting day of surviving. Bonus tip: always build a bed in your shelter. You'll be warmer when you're off the ground. Now, being stuck in the desert will for sure make you hot. But to avoid getting even hotter, don't take any clothes off. The fabric serves as insulation and keeps you cool, unless it's a thick wool sweater, of course. Most people living in hot climates wear white clothes covering their whole bodies to avoid getting overheated. Eating snow can cause further dehydration. Your body will use more energy to melt the snow and thus more liquid. Take your time and melt the snow first, and then you can drink the water. Also, make sure you're only melting pure white snow. Discoloration means it contains something else besides water, especially if the snow is, yellow. If you stay in the cold for too long, you might get nasty frostbite. If you recognize the symptoms, never rub your hands together. It can damage your skin even more. The best thing to do is to seek immediate medical care. So, you see a cave, and the first thing you do is start a fire. Cave people did that all the time, so it must be okay, right? Wrong. The buildup of smoke can be very harmful. Instead, try covering yourself with some plant leaves to warm up. Getting stung by a jellyfish hurts a lot, and taking a leak on a jellyfish sting will not help you. It'll make the situation much worse. Wash the area with salt water and ask for medical assistance. It'll save you from an uncomfortable situation. Trust me on this.
There are things about your body you know for sure, or don't you? Can you guess what exactly is a myth or fact? 1 point is for each correct answer. Let me know your score. Brown eggs are more nutritious than white eggs. Myth or fact? Myth. There is no study saying brown eggs are healthier than white eggs. The only difference is the color of the eggshell. The color of the eggshell doesn't affect its nutrition or quality. That is related to the type of chicken. Chickens with white earlobes tend to have white eggs. Have you heard that a large amount of the dust in your home is actually decanted skin? Not cool, I know. Do you think this is a myth or a fact? This is a myth. You're not just mopping your skin flakes from the floor. Many other components make the house dust. Fibers, hair, building materials, mold, pollen, insect body parts, and ash are some of them, according to the study made in Canadian houses. This makes sense because a house nearby a busy highway or in a renovation area has more dust than a house in the middle of a forest. Skin is our largest organ. Is this a fact or myth? It's a fact. You might think for a second that the intestine can be quite large when you unfold it, but nope. Skin wins the contest. An adult carries around 8 pounds and 22 square feet of skin. Can't think of us without a skin. It's not just there to cover our bodies, it has an essential role in protecting us too. You can't breathe and swallow at the same time. Myth or fact? It's a fact. Maybe you already knew the correct answer, but you tried it anyway after reading this, so see it for yourself. So in your throat, there are 2 passageways important for your survival. I'm putting aside the fancy medical names, and I'll refer to those 2 as airway and food pipe. They prevent breathing and swallowing simultaneously. Otherwise, food would enter the airway and cause severe complications. This doesn't always go as planned. That's why sometimes you end up coughing and preventing the piece of food from reaching the lungs. As well as having unique fingerprints, humans also have unique tongue prints. Is this a myth or fact? Fact! The human tongue is magnificent enough in its features that make us taste the food. It's also unique in its texture. People use biometric systems like fingerprints, voice scans, and iris scans for authentication. They are important to the identification and verification phases. Tongue print is unique, so it's very hard to copy it. It can be used as a biometric system tool too. What if people started using this system in their daily lives for safety reasons? Imagine locking a safe or your phone with a tongue print. An adult spends 3 hours in the bathroom every week. Do you think this is a fact or a myth? It's a fact. A poll by scientists reveals that an average adult spends 3 hours and 9 minutes on the toilet every week. This is more than the time they spent exercising. Take your sweet time, no need to rush. You swallow 8 spiders a year while sleeping. Myth or fact? Don't believe it. Lucky for us, and for the spiders of course, this is not true. Fear no more, and have a good night's sleep. Most spiders don't deliberately come near humans. Plus, vibrations coming from a sleeping person might be uncanny for them. Or maybe the spider just lives in the habitat. It thinks that you are flatmates sharing a room. As long as there is actual evidence, I call this a myth. Your thigh bone can resist thousands of pounds of force. Do you think this is a myth or a fact? Yes, this is a fact. People generally refer to it as tight bone, but its actual name is femur bone. This bone is located on the upper part of your leg. Experts say that this bone is hard to break. It's one of the 2 strongest bones in our anatomy. The first one is the temporal bone of the skull. If you wondered about the first one. Anyway, a tight bone can support 30 times more of your body weight. Maybe it's because the femur bone is the longest and largest bone in the human body. Do you believe that shaving your hair makes it grow back thicker? Fact or myth? Watch how I debunk that myth. Experts say shaving doesn't affect the thickness of the hair. The hair's head didn't remove, so the root is still there. You only shave the upper part. After a shave, the hair grows bluntly because it's been cut. That's why you may feel it's getting thicker. It's safe to eat food that's been on the floor for 5 seconds or less. Is this a fact or a myth? Sorry for blocking the best way you justify eating something that fell on the floor. There's no such thing as the 5-second rule. Researchers found that a substantial amount of bacteria transferred to the food within 5 seconds. The moisture of the food directly affects contamination. Imagine you drop a slice of watermelon and chips on the floor. I don't know why you're eating both together or how you end up dropping them both. But let's continue with this example anyway. The watermelon will have more contamination than chips. Because watermelon has more moisture in it, the surface of the watermelon is more open to transferring bacteria. Blondes and redheads may soon disappear. Myth or fact? An easy one, right? This is a myth. Red or blonde-colored hairs are connected to recessive genes. They can be carried from one generation to another without creating the hair color of the carrier. If both parents have the correct recessive genes, the chances are high that the next generation will have blonde or red hair. These genes are rare, but populations still have those genes carried out, so they won't get lost forever. For that to happen, literally everyone on the planet who carries that gene must disappear. So, the chances are low. Drinking coffee dehydrates you. Is it a fact or myth? Myth! You can enjoy your morning coffee. Okay, you may visit the bathroom more frequently after drinking coffee, but it doesn't mean you're losing more water. There are numerous studies made about the effects of caffeine. Some of these studies revealed that drinking a reasonable amount of coffee a day doesn't increase the risk of dehydration. Eating yogurt helps your digestion. Do you think this is a fact or just another myth? A fact, but with the right choice of yogurt. Yogurt is food containing probiotics. They are the good bacteria that make everything flow smoothly in your gut. Eating yogurt alone may not be enough to have a healthy digestive system. It supports the digestive system positively. Keep in mind, though, not all yogurts are equal. Some of them have sugar in them, or they come with toppings like candy or cookies. Go for the classic ones. Your hair will grow faster if you have it cut more often. Fact or myth? We were always told not to cry too much over the hair we lost because it would grow back faster. Unfortunately, the hair growth rate doesn't depend on how often you get a haircut. The average hair growth rate is 0.01 inches per day. Plus, many factors affect it: age, hormones, and even the time of year. Knowing this new fact may make some people postpone their hairdresser appointments.
Hi. Do chameleons only change color for camouflage? No. They can actually change colors to reflect their mood. So, males turn a bright color to show their dominance, and they become darker when they get aggressive. Chameleons also change color to adapt to different temperatures. A cold chameleon will turn dark to absorb more heat, while a smoking hot chameleon will turn itself pale to reflect the sun's rays. By the way, do comedians change color for camouflage? Only if their jokes aren't getting any laughs. Okay, I made that up. Now, there's a myth that if you drop a penny from a skyscraper, it'll pretty much destroy whatever's underneath. But when put to the test, researchers found that it just isn't true. On its way down, a coin can't gather enough velocity to cause permanent damage to anything, mostly because of wind resistance and the penny spinning around and stuff. Anyway, just hang on to your change. Now, some people believe that toilet flushes spin in the opposite direction in the southern hemisphere. Some things are affected by the Earth's rotation, like the Gulf Stream or hurricanes. But toilet flushes are way too small. Flushes can spin in either direction, whether they're in the northern or southern hemispheres. Trust me, I know. The biggest determinant of flush direction is the design of the toilet bowl and the water pressure. There's a popular saying that lightning never strikes in the same place twice. Lightning often strikes near the same place a lot more than that. Lightning generally chooses the tallest, pointiest spot as its target. Researchers have found that the Empire State Building gets struck by lightning almost 100 times a year, and quite a few people have been zapped more than once, like a lot more. So, if you're tall and pointy, be careful out there. So there's a common belief that bats are blind. But bats have better vision than humans at night, although humans can see more clearly during the day. Maybe this myth came about because bats rely a lot on their hearing to get about. Or maybe it's because bats see the world in black and white. Now, do goldfish really have short memories? Well, most people put it at 7 seconds. In reality, goldfish can remember things for as long as 7 months. Without a good memory, goldfish who live in nature would never find food. Did anyone ever tell you that a mother bird will reject its offspring if they've been touched by a human? That would be nuts, because most birds don't have a developed sense of smell. They'd never be able to identify the scent of a person. The vulture is an exception to this rule. It has an amazing nose, but then who'd want to touch a vulture anyway? Ostriches bury their heads in the sand when they're scared, except they don't. This myth probably came into being because an ostrich's head is disproportionately small in comparison to its body. So, from a distance, it looks as if the ostrich has its head stuffed in the sand. But if it really did that, it would pass out from not being able to breathe. Another myth is that opossums hang on branches with their tail. The opossum does use its tail to help it climb trees, but its tail can't support its weight. Even a hulked-out calisthenics master opossum could only hang there for a few seconds max. Legend has it that a penguin will fall backward when looking up at an aircraft. Cutest myth ever. Penguins can maintain their balance no matter what, even while looking up at the sky. But low-flying airplanes may cause penguins to flee their nests in panic. Do dogs really sweat by salivating? No, they sweat through their foot pads. But salivating and panting does help them regulate their body temperature. Cat owners may think that a cat only purrs when it's happy. But cats also purr when they're hungry, distressed, or recovering from an injury. Researchers think that purring may be a self-healing trick. Somehow, it keeps their bones and muscles working better. Legend has it that if you run into a skunk, there's only one possible outcome. You're gonna stink for a while. But skunks prefer to flee from danger rather than spraying their magic juice around. That smelly spray's their last line of defense. Before that, they usually stomp their feet and slap their tails to ward off any danger. Did you know there's an alpha wolf in every pack? Except again, there isn't. Unlike captive wolves, wild wolves don't share this kind of social order. They live in family groups like humans, where the parents are the leaders and the little ones gotta do as they're told. There's a myth that owls can turn their heads full circle, but that would cause them significant damage. But still, they can turn their heads comfortably more than halfway around because of their unique neck bone structure. If you've ever poked a turtle's shell thinking it won't hurt the guy inside, you'd be wrong. A turtle's shell is a living and feeling part of its body, with a complete nerve ending supply. If the shell gets damaged, it can even endanger the turtle's life. There was a time when people thought that unwashed hair was the ideal habitat for head lice. But head lice don't discriminate. No, they can make themselves a home in all hair types. All they really want is a warm scalp. Most people are familiar with the phrase, "an apple a day keeps the doctor away." Apples are good for you, sure. They're packed with nutrients like fiber and vitamin C. But does anyone really think that's enough? When it comes to food hygiene, the 5-second rule just doesn't make sense. There should be a "where you drop it" rule to replace the 5-second one. Generally, if you drop food on your kitchen floor, it's going to pick up fewer bacteria than if you drop it at the checkout counter of a busy supermarket. Of course, that's assuming your kitchen's clean. Uh-oh. Ever wondered whether the story about chewing gum taking 7 years to digest is true? Nah, it isn't. Chewing gum isn't too different from any other food. It takes around the same time to digest, but it's not exactly nutrient-heavy. Legend has it that catching a cold is likelier to happen in cold weather. But studies have shown that weather doesn't really play a part in getting a cold. A virus does. People may experience more cold-like symptoms when the weather is icy cold, but temperature has nothing to do with recovery time or anything like that. Do people only use 10% of their brains? Well, I have some friends who seem to, never mind. No, the answer is no. Scientists who've studied brain scans say they don't show any large dormant areas of the brain. But if the myth is just about humans having a long way to go to reach their full potential, yeah, that sounds about right. One of life's no-nos is to jump into the pool right after eating. But hitting the gym after a big meal can leave you feeling just as uncomfortable as doing a few laps. Also, if you're worried about getting a cramp in the pool, those can happen anytime, not just after a meal. Does shaved hair grow back darker and thicker? Researchers say it doesn't. But shaving does give your hair a blunt tip, which can make it feel thicker. When it comes to color, that new, darker stubble is just an illusion. Some people are convinced that eating turkey leaves them feeling drowsy. It's true that turkey has a chemical that can cause drowsiness, but so does chicken or beef. Turkey's a favorite for those massive family celebrations, so that drowsiness, it's probably due to the huge amount you ate. The myth that people lose most of their body heat through their heads was probably first invented by a hat salesman. Not surprising. Scientists say that people lose only about 10% of their body heat through their heads. You lose heat through your skin, no matter where that skin is. Have you heard the saying that a full moon can affect your mind somehow? And no, but researchers believe that light from a full moon can affect your sleep, which can affect your mood. Did ancient Vikings really wear those awesome horned helmets? There's no real evidence to back up this claim. This myth probably came from books and music, looking to spice up their heroes a bit. If you want to see a Viking with a helmet, Go to a Minnesota Vikings game. That's about as close as you're going to get. Some people believe Einstein flunked math in school. Einstein himself debunked this theory by saying he mastered calculus at age 15. But Einstein did fail to enter the school of his choice because he flunked languages on his first try. But math? He passed with flying colors.
Eating before swimming doesn't cause cramps. Everyone knows that you have to wait at least 30 minutes after eating to go swimming. If you don't, you might cramp up, or even worse, sink. This is actually not true. Our bodies are perfectly adapted to swim while full. If you do happen to get a cramp while in the pool for any reason, just relax and float. You'll be feeling fine soon enough. Handling a toad or frog won't give you warts. Warts are caused by a certain virus, which is only carried by humans. The myth came about because of the bumpy, wart-like skin texture of toads and tree frogs. Frogs might not give you warts, but they could still be poisonous, so you shouldn't handle them. You don't accidentally eat 8 spiders a year while sleeping. This old myth doesn't have a leg, or 8 legs, to stand on. Most people sleep with their mouths closed, so in the unlikely event that a spider actually made it to your face, it wouldn't even have the opportunity to go into your mouth. If you sleep with your mouth open, though, you're most likely snoring, which creates vibrations strong enough to scare any spiders away. Bananas don't grow on trees. We call the plant that bananas grow on banana trees, but guess what? They're actually an herb. Weirdly, they're most closely related to the ginger family. These trees are really just big stem-like succulents, like aloe vera, jade plants, or cacti. Just don't try peeling cacti like a banana. The banana itself is also technically a berry, like a pumpkin, a cucumber, and an avocado. Sitting too close to a TV won't ruin your eyes. We've all been told not to sit too close to the TV and PC monitor or you'll damage your eyes. Ophthalmologists have said that it can cause temporary strain to the eyes, but long-term problems are rare. If you're nearsighted, chances are you're always going to be, whether you sit too close or not. You don't lose most of your body heat through your head. While it may feel that way during the winter, our body loses heat all over. You need to wear a hat because it's more exposed, unlike the rest of the body, which is kept toasty with jackets and thick pants. Swallowed gum won't stay in you for 7 years. You should definitely avoid swallowing gum. That's not something that's good for you. But just in case you do by accident, you'll be happy to learn that it won't stay inside your body for 7 years. You can't fully digest the gum, but all that happens is that gum leaves your body naturally in a matter of days. Our tongues don't have different sections for tasting. There's no bitter, sweet, sour, umami, or salty sections of our tongue whatsoever. This giant muscle can taste everything all over, so you don't have to worry about keeping specific foods in specific parts of your mouth. Fingerprints might not be unique. Sounds terrifying, doesn't it? Well, the reasoning is actually very simple. We can't check every fingerprint on Earth, so it's difficult to know if they really are unique to each individual. Related people can have somewhat similar fingerprints, and there are over 7 billion people on the planet, so it's almost impossible to check. Sushi doesn't mean raw fish. While many people will think it means raw fish, sushi actually comes from a Japanese word meaning sour rice. And it's the rice that's at the heart and soul of every piece of sushi. That's why you can buy sushi with cooked fish in it in supermarkets. Sharks do have tongues. It's a common debate, but it turns out that sharks do have tongues. Just not the types of ones that you can find on people. Most can't even move them around, so it barely counts. For example, the cookie cutter shark's tongue doesn't help much with eating. Instead, it supports some of the bones around its gills. And no, it doesn't make delicious cookies. You can swallow watermelon seeds. Watermelon is the perfect summertime treat. But worrying about a plant growing inside you can completely ruin it. Oh, not to worry. Seeds can't survive and grow inside stomach acid. Watermelon seeds are actually good for you. Flies live longer than 24 hours. Some flies can live for a few days to even years. That's right, those pesky houseflies live a lot longer than you think. Sometimes even up to a month. So trapping one in a room won't make it go away faster. It just means that you won't have access to that room for a long time. Fresh fruits and veggies aren't superior to frozen. Having fresh instead of frozen produce might seem like a no-brainer, but the choice isn't actually so simple. By the time that juicy mango or crisp carrot gets to your local store, it's actually been through a lot. Most fresh produce travels on trucks or ships or planes and gets processed. Once it arrives, it's often covered in pesticides in order to keep it fresh. Now, on the other hand, frozen fruits and vegetables are immediately frozen, keeping all their nutrients and minerals preserved. If you can grow your own produce, though, you can guarantee freshness. The Great Wall of China can't be seen from the moon. The only thing that you can see from the moon is Earth, which is mostly white with blue and patches of yellow and green vegetation. No man-made object is easily visible from this far away. In low Earth orbit, though, cities can be seen during the night and day. These include major roadways, airports, dams, and reservoirs. Hey, I can even see my house from there. Lightning can strike the same spot more than once. This myth has been around for a very long time, and it's just simply not true. Lightning will strike whatever is attracting it, however many times it can. This means that in many cases, it's more likely to strike twice. Just watch the Empire State Building during a lightning storm. It gets hit more than 100 times every year. Saturn's rings aren't solid. When you see a photo of Saturn, it'd be easy to assume that the rings are solid, but they're not. The rings are made up of tiny particles of rock and ice that vary in size, from as small as a grain of sand to as large as a house. Good luck trying to spacewalk on these rings. Cracking your knuckles won't cause arthritis. A lot of people are scared to crack their knuckle joints because of advice from friends and family. The most common myth is that it causes arthritis. Well, this just isn't true at all. One scientist even cracked the knuckles in his left hand for over 60 years and was left with no discomfort whatsoever. Waking a sleepwalker won't hurt them. In fact, the most dangerous thing for a sleepwalker is allowing them to carry on wandering around. Getting them back to bed so they don't hurt themselves is the best way to make sure that they're okay. We use most of our brain percentage. We use far more than the myth of 10%. That's right, especially you, Brightside viewer. Although some parts of the brain have yet to be figured out by scientists, we know enough to debunk this idea. We actually turn parts of our brain on and off and tap into different parts when they're needed. Now, we haven't unlocked any secret powers yet, but hopefully we can find something one day. Bears don't really sleep during hibernation. Bears don't sleep for months on end while hibernating. They actually go into something called torpor. This means that they slow things down in their bodies, but are still able to react to any stimuli around them. If you see one sleeping during winter, just make sure to keep your distance. Chameleons change color to show their mood and to communicate. Chameleons are known as masters of camouflage, but they often don't even use their abilities to camouflage. They actually change color to show when they're feeling a strong emotion. When they're agitated and upset, they'll turn black. When they're happy, they'll stay a bright green or blue. The sun isn't a fireball. The sun doesn't burn as we think of it, like logs on a fire or a gas stove. It glows because it's a giant ball of gas, with nuclear fusion taking place in its core. Our sun isn't yellow or white either. It glows green-blue. The human eye sees all the rainbow colors around it and mixes them together to make the sun's famous golden yellow. Dogs see more than black and white. Asking dogs to read an eye chart or to pick out colors would be impractical, but scientists have been able to figure out the vision of dogs. They see the world through a basic color scheme of yellow, blue, and gray, not black and white. It seems that they also lack the ability to see the range of colors from green to red. Chasing a tennis ball has to do with movement and smell more than color. Salt doesn't make water boil faster. That tiny pinch you put in before your pasta doesn't make any difference to the amount of time it takes to come up to a boil. The same goes for putting oil into the water to stop your pasta from sticking. It doesn't work, but it might still be worth adding some if you want to make sure that the water doesn't boil over. Vikings probably never wore horned helmets. As awesome as they looked, Vikings didn't have a practical use for horned helmets. This look was created for an opera costume in the 19th century, and it's stuck ever since. Get the point? Looking sharp. Some Vikings might have used them, but archaeological finds have suggested that if they did use them, it wasn't very common.
Now, as much as we love epic space battles with blasters cutting through the black void and causing cheerful booms, that's not exactly what happens when something explodes in the big black. Space is basically vacuum, meaning it has no oxygen, and oxygen is an essential part of any process of burning we have here on Earth. You might argue that stars can burn and explode into supernova, but that's not exactly true either. Stars don't rely on oxygen, so they're not burning. There are constant thermonuclear reactions going on inside them. So a spaceship can only explode like that if it has a nuclear power plant installed in it. If it doesn't, then the only special effect you get is a brief flash that disappears in the blink of an eye. Liquid oxygen, which is often on board spaceships, is very quick to burn out in the vacuum of outer space. As for the boom, oxygen plays a crucial role here too. Sound only travels thanks to molecules of air bumping into each other. Since there's no air in space, the whole scene would be pretty much absolutely silent. And that's not a bad thing either. Just imagine how deafening would the sun be if the sound could travel in space. Despite what many sci-fi directors want us to believe, there's no dark side to the moon. Our satellite is tidally locked with Earth, meaning it's always turned to us with one side, while the other always looks away. The sun is much farther from us than the moon, and we're both turning round and round, warming and lighting this side and that in turn. It means that once in every short while, the moon is lit by the sun from either side. It's just that we can't see it from where we are. While things appear weightless in outer space, there's actual gravity all over the place. It becomes weaker the further you get from a heavy object, like our planet, but it's still there. In fact, there's not a single place in the universe that isn't affected by gravity of this or that cosmic object. Everything that has mass has gravity as well. Yes, even you and me. But space objects are so massive that they tug smaller things towards them. That's why the planets of the solar system orbit around the Sun, and our whole Milky Way galaxy orbits around its own center. Scientists believe there's a supermassive black hole there, about 4 million times heavier than the Sun, which keeps all the stars and systems from flying apart. Our movie hero leaves the orbit of Mars on their trusty spaceship and heads on towards Jupiter. Their face is grim and determined, even though they know what threat awaits them ahead – the asteroid belt. They pitch and yaw, dodging the asteroid flying at enormous speeds toward the spacecraft, but one of them still hits it. No, just a scratch, thankfully. Finally, our hero leaves the danger zone and wipes the sweat from the brow with a shaking hand. Sounds familiar, but couldn't be further from the truth. Asteroids in the belt between Mars and Jupiter are so few and far between that if you ever travel through it, you might not even encounter one the whole way. There are about 1.5 million sizable space rocks flying there, give or take 500,000. But let's not forget, space is a vast place. The distance between two asteroids of any significant size would be millions of miles. So a space chase with two ships weaving between floating rocks would be quite boring in there. Space is often depicted as a black, cold, and desolate place, especially when a movie astronaut leaves the safety of their spaceship. Everything about this description is okay, except for the cold part. It's only true if you find yourself in some really far corner of our galaxy that has no nearby stars. But if you're, for example, in the Earth's orbit and directly facing the Sun, the temperature in the cosmic vacuum could reach a scorching 250 degrees. That's why spacesuits are white. This color reflects light better than any other. Still, the temperature at your back, which isn't exposed to the sun's rays, can be really freezing indeed. Heat doesn't spread equally through space, so if you're not turned towards a heat source, you get very, very cold. Speaking about the sun, it somehow always appears yellow in movies. The fact is, the color we see from Earth is an optical illusion created by our planet's atmosphere, just as the blue sky during the day. The light from the sun spreads in the atmosphere and gets distorted, making colorful spectacles at dawn and dusk. In the vacuum of space, there's nothing to reflect the light, so the sun appears as it really is, white. That ball of glowing gas is that hot. There's a bright flash in the sky, followed by a tail of smoke, and a red-hot space rock crashes into the ground, leaving a huge charred crater after impact. Well, although the smoky tail and the crater are partly true, meteorites don't really have a chance to become that hot while falling. Meteorite is an asteroid that somehow entered the Earth's atmosphere and survived the friction enough to fall on the surface. This happens pretty often. We just don't usually see those rocks because they're normally quite small and fall into uninhabited areas. But even if one falls within a city, the crater would appear because of the sheer speed of the meteorite, not its heat. They do get much hotter because of friction, yet not so much as to burn everything on the ground on impact. As much as we want to believe in instant communication between spaceships and planets, it's not possible, at least not yet. Modern communication systems rely on radio signals that have a pretty slow speed compared to the vast expanses of space. It would take years for such a signal to travel even 1 light year, let alone hundreds and thousands. If you want to send a message to a galaxy far, far away, be prepared to wait a couple of millennia and then a couple more to receive a reply. On that note, space is not as crowded and full of events as is often shown on the silver screen. It's mostly a rather lonely place where planets, stars, and other objects are separated by billions of miles of nothingness. Even if you have a spaceship that can travel at the speed of light, most of the time you'll only see black void full of stars and planets far away. The distances are enormous out there, even between the closest objects. For a better understanding, the Moon, which you can see so well on a clear night, is about 239,000 miles away. It's like traveling around the Earth almost 10 times in a row. Warp drives that can distort space-time and get you to a distant corner of an alien galaxy in the blink of an eye, that's a staple of any space opera. Spaceships capable of such a feat are always shown as instantly accelerating from zero to faster than light. According to the law of physics, people on board should, well, at least be pushed into their seats hard. More strictly speaking, no one would be able to survive such an acceleration because it's too many G's on a fragile human body. Until we find a way to reduce the effects of overload, we can't even start thinking of space warps. Water isn't the rarest and most precious resource in the universe. In fact, there's a humongous space cloud several million light-years away from us that consists entirely of water. Its reserves would be enough to fill all our oceans 140 trillion times over. And many planets, some even in our solar system, seem to have liquid water on them. The most precious resource in space is life, and that requires a lot more stuff to appear than just liquid water. Astronauts are often shown working out on the ISS and sci-fi space stations, and that much is true, they do need physical activity. But the reason isn't that they need strong bodies to work in space. The gravity out there is much weaker, and astronauts don't use their muscles as much as on Earth. So when they come back to the surface, gravity hits them as a sledgehammer, and their bodies feel squishy. To alleviate those effects, they train every day. Although they say we can see millions of stars on a clear starry night, that number is much more modest, about 3,000. All the rest are other objects that are also luminous and mistaken for stars: planets, distant galaxies, and even artificial satellites. They're simply being illuminated by real stars, just like the moon, and become seen. But because they're that far away, we can't tell if they're stars or not. Still, you gotta admit, it's all still pretty cool. That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.